Chapter 157. Yu Qianqiu floated in the air on his sword with a ruthless look on his face. Cold lights and shadows were everywhere around him, dancing all over the sky. When Yu Qianqiu moved in the air, there were nearly 100 cold lights following him. Every time his limbs moved, the sword shadows in the sky would be in a commotion. Everything was under his control and his momentum was extraordinary. Feng Xiangtian, who was in the attic, suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, "If I remember correctly, there seems to be a set of sword skills in the Sutra's depository called Guiyuan sword skill. The higher the cultivation, the more flying swords you can control. Yu Qianqiu should be practicing this set of sword skills." Osihai, who was beside him, nodded, then shook his head and said, "The Guiyuan sword skill doesn't seem to be so fast and powerful. Otherwise, many disciples would have practiced it." Feng Xiangtian's eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it has been modified by him. If that's the case, then this Yu Qianqiu's cultivation talent is really extraordinary." Osihai frowned and did not say anything. He did not believe what the head said. Modified the cultivation method? What a joke. The person who was most familiar with the cultivation method was the creator of the method. How could other people who practiced this method change it randomly? Unless he was not afraid of death or qigong deviation. In fact, both Feng Xiangtian and Osihai were right. However, the latter did not know that when Yu Qianqiu was modifying the sword technique, there were indeed many times when he almost went berserk. However, whenever his body was damaged or about to collapse, the golden bead in his body would display its miraculous effect, constantly repairing and maintaining his body. That was why Yu Qianqiu, who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, changed this sword technique of Guiyuan into his own unique sword technique. As for his talent in cultivation, it probably had nothing to do with it. All the people who were familiar with Yu Qianqiu were stunned. They did not know how many more secrets this guy had. In short, once he did it, it was very eye-catching. Just when everyone was guessing what he was going to do, Yu Qianqiu stretched out 2 fingers and drew 2 circles in the air. Close to 100 flying swords followed his gestures and split into 2, forming 2 circles of swords behind him. In the eyes of the surrounding people, it was as if he had grown a pair of glowing wings on his back. The disciple hiding in the Vajra barrier panicked once more. Although the astral breaker talismans did not harm him, the explosion had caused his blood and qi to churn, making him feel unbearably uncomfortable. It took him a long time to calm down, but from the looks of it, the fellow in the sky was going to do something again. It was a matter of life and death, so it would be strange if he was not afraid. The light barrier protecting him became golden again. "Quick!" Yu Qianqiu shouted at the 2 circles of swords behind him. One of the 2 circles of swords behind him suddenly broke off, forming 2 long dragons on the left and right, pouncing toward the golden egg below. Immediately, a series of clanking sounds of metal colliding rang out. As the clanking sounds rang out, Yu Qianqiu moved his fingers again. The 2 sword dragons once again formed 2 circles, connecting with each other in a circulatory cycle manner. They kept colliding with the golden egg, and the rapid and sharp sounds of collision rang out. This scene fell into the eyes of the crowd, as if the 2 wings on Yu Qianqiu's body had grown onto the golden egg below. Suddenly Yu Qianqiu moved his fingers and pointed down. The 2 high-speed circles of swords immediately sped up, turning into 2 beams of light. The sounds of collision were no longer rapid, but a continuous, sharp, ear-piercing sound. After listening for a while, the crowd felt a sense of irritation in their chests. They felt flustered and immediately circulated their qi to resist. Yu Qianqiu looked down with a determined expression. He took out a handful of qi recovery pills and stuffed them into his mouth. "Damn it. I'm going to drag it out with you today. I don't believe that this turtle shell can protect you forever." Everyone could see that he wanted to fight a protracted battle, but the noise was really disturbing and uncomfortable. What they didn't know was that the disciple in the light barrier was suffering 1,000 times more than the crowd. The sharp, bone-piercing sound was right beside his ears. He couldn't hide even if he wanted to. He could only sit down cross-legged and circulate his qi to resist. Elder Mo of the Artifact Refining Pavilion, who was on the pavilion, asked in surprise, "Old Guan, what is your disciple doing?" Guan Weiwu turned around and rolled his eyes at him. He thought to himself, "You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask?" After a while, Elder Mo suddenly shouted, "Oh no, look at the disciple in the Vajra barrier." The people on the pavilion looked over. It was so far away that they couldn't see clearly. They immediately circulated their qi to take a closer look. When they saw clearly, they were all shocked. The disciple's face was pale and his body was trembling non-stop. His eyes, mouth, nose, ears and other orifices were bleeding. His appearance was dispirited and miserable. It was obvious that he was injured. How could this be? Feng Xiangtian was also shocked. The group of elders looked at each other in dismay. Even with their cultivation and knowledge, no one could tell how Yu Qianqiu had injured that disciple. In fact, Yu Qianqiu himself didn't know what was going on. He was the closest to the disciple, so he was the first to notice the abnormality. At first, he saw that the disciple was shivering in the turtle shell. He didn't pay much attention to it. When he noticed that something was wrong, he focused and saw that the disciple was bleeding from his orifices. What was going on? After a while, Yu Qianqiu came to a realization. It was probably the high-intensity noise he made that injured the disciple. No matter what, he was someone who had lived in the technological era for so many years in his previous life. Of course, he knew that the sound waves produced by noise could also kill people. Damn. It was a lucky hit. So it was like this. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. The speed of the flying sword was raised to the limit. The ear-piercing sound made the people around them feel disturbed. Yu Qianqiu stared at the disciple's reaction in the turtle shell. When he saw that the disciple was shaking even more violently, he knew that he had guessed correctly. He stuffed another qi recovery pill into his mouth and thought, "Bastard, let's see how long you can resist." Not long after, everyone suddenly noticed that the light emitted by the Vajra shield was flickering. Even the disciples in the early stage of foundation establishment could see that something was wrong. Yu Qianqiu sneered again and again. He could clearly see that the person inside was not only bleeding from his 7 orifices, but even his pores were oozing blood. Yet he was still stubbornly resisting. It seemed that he was not far from death. Everyone in the attic naturally saw this. Elder Mo sighed and said, "I'm afraid it's almost over." Everyone had their own thoughts and were silent. Only Osihai's face was frighteningly gloomy. Suddenly the surroundings boiled. The Vajra shield on the cultivation pavilion disciple's body suddenly disappeared. His whole body was finally exposed. He was covered in blood and fell to the ground. Bang! Yu Qianqiu's face was full of joy as he shouted. After waiting for a long time, he finally succeeded. If he didn't act now, then when would he? He understood the principle of delay. Nearly 100 cold lights swarmed toward the disciple like a flock of crows fighting for food. Now everyone knew that the disciple was dead for sure. Osihai, who was in the attic, slammed his palm on the railing. His lips were tightly shut and his face was gloomy. He didn't say a word. Feng Xiangtian glanced at him and didn't say anything. On the other hand, Guan Weiwu was a bit like a thief. His disciple defeated his opponent, but he didn't show any joy. Instead, he secretly looked at the people on both sides. With a burst of blood mist, the flying swords completed their mission. They turned into cold lights and flashed back into Yu Qianqiu's storage pouch. When the blood mist dissipated, there was nothing left except a pool of blood on the ground. Yu Qianqiu floated to the ground. The long sword under his feet fell into his hand. He walked to the pool of blood, picked up the bloody bracelet with his sword, and put it into his storage pouch. Chapter 158. Silence. The surroundings were very quiet. Everyone was still immersed in the moment when the flying sword dismembered the body. No one could have imagined that a flying sword could be used to such a bloody extent that not even a piece of flesh or bone could be found. The most frightening thing was that with Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he was actually able to break the middle-grade defensive magic treasure, the Vajra bracelet. No one could see how he did it. In any case, the person inside was killed by him just like that. The first to wake up were the supervising elders. Because Yu Qianqiu's matches were too eye-catching, there were still a few matches that hadn't been decided and had already stopped. At this moment, under the reprimand of the elders, the matches continued. However, no one dared to kill each other anymore. Yu Qianqiu's previous actions were already very clear. Those who wanted to kill him had better not meet him, or else the consequences would be very tragic. Lu Guang and that disciple were in stark contrast. The former was unharmed while the latter's bones couldn't even be found. This competition was decided by drawing lots. Who could guarantee that they wouldn't meet Yu Qianqiu? Who still thought that they could beat Yu Qianqiu with their late core formation cultivation? In the end, the remaining people competed peacefully. After the winners and losers were decided, nothing happened. The spectators, on the other hand, felt that it wasn't intense enough and lacked interest. After the match was over, someone immediately came to the competition venue to repair the ground that had been smashed. The atmosphere over at the cultivation pavilion was oppressive. The disciples who were about to compete were all secretly thinking about who would be unlucky enough to meet Yu Qianqiu. Those who had killed in the previous 2 matches were even more nervous. Xiao Wanqing, who was on the 10,000 Fragrance Gardens side, felt that something was wrong. She didn't say anything and smiled like a flower. Her eyes flickered as she looked at the disciple who had just won. Her expression was worth thinking about. In reality, she wasn't the only one looking over. There were too many disciples from each faction to count. It was just that their gazes were different from hers. The disciples of the alchemy pavilion all looked as if they were on steroids. They stood there in high spirits as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know they were disciples of the alchemy pavilion. Yang Chen grinned and said, "You Qianqiu, you sure hit it well. What? Are you going to defeat all the disciples of the cultivation pavilion?" Hearing this, the nearby disciples all gathered their heads, wanting to hear how Elder Guan's direct disciple would answer. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said modestly, "Martial Uncle Yang thinks too highly of me. I was just lucky just now." Chapter 159. Yes, sect leader. After Elder Mo responded, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "It's a pity to stay in the elixir refinery pavilion with such cultivation talent. It's better to transfer you to the cultivation pavilion." Yu Qianqiu didn't know how to answer this question, so he obediently pretended not to hear it. Hai, who originally had a gloomy expression, raised his eyebrows inadvertently. He looked up and down at Yu Qianqiu and thought to himself, "That's right. Why didn't I think of it? With such cultivation talent, he should come to my cultivation pavilion. Isn't hiding in the elixir refinery pavilion a waste of talent? Besides, it's not shameful for a disciple to compete with another disciple." Hai's expression relaxed, and he started to have ideas about Yu Qianqiu. "We all saw that disciple die under your sword just now. However, before the Vajra shield broke, that disciple had already bled to death. What magic art did you use?" Feng Xiangtian asked again. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and smiled. "I didn't use any magic art. He died from being noisy." "Noisy to death? Are you kidding me?" The group of old guys exchanged glances. "Nonsense," Hai said coldly. "Sigh. A bunch of illiterates." Seeing that they didn't believe him, Yu Qianqiu bowed to Hai and said, "If Elder O doesn't believe me, would you like to accompany me to do an experiment? Elder O will understand once you try." "How do I do it?" Hai took a few steps forward. There was a large bell hanging low on the top floor of the cultivation pavilion. Yu Qianqiu saw it when he came up. He walked in front of the bell and shook the baton to hit the bell. Dong. A dull and distant sound came from the top of the building. Everyone downstairs looked up, not knowing what was going on up there. Yu Qianqiu pointed to the bell with a little embarrassment and said, "Elder O, can you bend down and stand in the bell for a while?" Without saying a word, Hai bent down and stood in the bell shouting, "You try, Dong." Before he finished speaking, the bell had been rung by Yu Qianqiu. From the bottom of the bell, Hai's body could be seen trembling. After the buzzing sound stopped, Yu Qianqiu said with respect, "Elder O, you can come out now." After waiting for a while, Hai came out with a strange look on his face. He hadn't prepared anything just now, so he was immediately shocked by the sound of the bell. "Elder O, what's wrong with you?" Everyone asked when they saw his strange expression. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed in his heart. The old man must be suffering. Hai shook his head and said dully, "It was so loud. I wasn't prepared and almost fainted." Guan Weiwu walked to the front of the bell and knocked it twice. He said hesitantly, "The sound is indeed loud, but it shouldn't be enough to make people faint. Phil, I'll go in and try. You knock it and see." After that, he also went in. Ferdinand rolled his eyes and walked over angrily. He shook the pestle and hit it hard. Plop. Guan Weiwu sat on the ground, covered his ears with his hands and rolled out. He climbed up shakily, but he was still a little unsteady. After a long time, he calmed down and exhaled, "So powerful." At this time, everyone knew that what Yu Qianqiu said was true, but they still didn't understand the reason. After all, they and Yu Qianqiu's ideas were completely different, so it was understandable. Feng Xiangtian pondered and said, "Yu Qianqiu, do you mean that the disciple died because of your noise?" "Yes." Yu Qianqiu said respectfully, "That disciple was hiding inside the Vajra barrier. I used my flying swords to continuously attack it. The sound he heard inside was 1,000 times louder than what we heard outside. After a while, no one would be able to endure it. Naturally, he was shaken to death." Yu Qianqiu had originally wanted to explain to them what noise and sound waves were, but after thinking about it, he figured that they wouldn't understand, so he didn't say anything. It was enough to let them understand the general meaning so that they wouldn't be long-winded. Everyone looked at each other. It was the first time they knew that sound could kill. Feng Xiangtian nodded and said, "Yu Qianqiu, why do you want to participate in this competition? Yu Qianqiu said respectfully, I want to go out and broaden my horizons. Then you should know that the outside is not like the inside of Fuxian Island. There are dangers at all times. Aren't you afraid? Feng Xiangtian said. How can I see the rainbow without going through wind and rain? I'm not afraid. Yu Qianqiu replied solemnly. The group of old guys nodded. Feng Xiangtian smiled and said, How can I see the rainbow without going through wind and rain? Well said he. Yu Qianqiu, you can leave first. Yu Qianqiu bowed to everyone and was about to leave. Osihai said, Yu Qianqiu, the Vajra bracelet belongs to a disciple of the Cultivation Pavilion. It should be taken back. Seeing that you are going out to gain experience, the Cultivation Pavilion will give it to you to protect yourself. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He thanked him and left. The group of elders stared at Osihai strangely. Elder Imo said, Elder O, when did you become so generous? Osihai glared at him and ignored him. He followed the sect leader to stand in front of the railing to watch the competition below. Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianqiu walking away and sighed. Through this conversation he was very fond of Yu Qianqiu. At such a young age with such talent, his future was limitless. Unfortunately he was not his own personal disciple. Thinking of this, he glanced at Guan Weiwu and sighed in his heart. Since the following competition had nothing to do with him, Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to watch anymore. He said goodbye to the disciples of the Alchemy Pavilion and left the Cultivation Pavilion's territory. He flew straight to the Alchemy Pavilion on his sword. When the other disciples of the Alchemy Pavilion saw that Yu Qianqiu had left, they also felt that there was no point in the competition and left. The disciples of each faction also came for Yu Qianqiu. When the main character left, they all left one after another. The entire square was suddenly left with the Cultivation Pavilion performing a one-man show. The group of old guys in the Alchemy Pavilion finally understood who the main character of this competition was. In the following days, Yu Qianqiu did not watch any of the finals and nascent soul stage competitions. He did what he was supposed to do. He did not know that his name had once again spread throughout supporting Xian Island, causing a group of Qi condensation stage disciples who had no chance to watch the competition to be filled with regret. They often pestered the seniors who had watched the competition to talk about it. As for the so-called seniors of the various lineages, they were filled with admiration for Yu Qianqiu. When they spoke, they couldn't help but add oil and vinegar. As a result, a climax of learning from Yu Qianqiu was set off in supporting Immortal Island. In particular, when it was said that Yu Qianqiu cultivated the Guiyuan sword technique of the Sutra Pavilion, a group of Qi condensation stage disciples were amazed. It turned out that supporting Xian Island had such a powerful sword technique. They immediately set their cultivation goal on the Guiyuan sword technique after they reached the foundation establishment stage. The Sutra Pavilion was also very lively these days. Some foundation establishment stage disciples all went to study the Guiyuan sword technique. As a result, a scene that had not been seen on supporting Xian Island for thousands of years appeared. There were tens of thousands of disciples on supporting Xian Island. Because there was only one sword technique and it could not be taken out, those who came could only memorize it. As a result, countless foundation establishment stage disciples lined up in the Sutra Pavilion. Some people saw that the scene was so lively, and they were afraid that they would not be able to line up. They even brought food to line up overnight. Of course, some people with higher cultivation levels also came. Everyone had seen the competition that day, so they naturally wanted to see what was so special about the Guiyuan sword technique. It actually allowed Yu Qianqiu to kill disciples with higher cultivation levels than him. It was really worth learning from. Chapter 160. A few days later, the results of the competition were out. 5 nascent soul stage disciples and 10 core formation stage disciples were confirmed. Yu Qianqiu got what he wanted, so he was naturally one of them. Furong knew that Yu Qianqiu was going to leave tomorrow, so she spent the entire day in Alchemy Pavilion, Yu Qianqiu's exclusive courtyard. The two of them were about to part, so it was inevitable that they would say some sweet nothings. The stone table in the courtyard was filled with food. Naturally, it was brought by a certain someone. Furong sat on the side with an unhappy expression. She pouted and said, "What am I going to do if you leave? If I had known earlier, I would have gone to participate in the competition." Knowing that she didn't want to part with him, Yu Qianqiu smiled but didn't say anything. He thought, if you want to participate in the competition, your old man won't agree even if you beat him to death. In this shitty sect, killing people doesn't even happen in the blink of an eye. It's as normal as eating a damn meal. Yeah, this girl. After her face was healed, she was clearly more cheerful than before. She also talked more. Unfortunately, her personality was still a bit introverted. But that was also good. She was so beautiful. If she was too extroverted, she would definitely make him wear a green hat. She was a beauty. It was like this. If you didn't provoke others, there would be others who would provoke you. Qianqiu, you're the most resourceful. Think of a way to bring me out as well. Furong's smile was like a flower. She got up and picked up the wine pot, pouring wine for Yu Qianqiu and flattering him. Yu Qianqiu was pestered by her for a long time. It really was a bit of a headache. His eyes turned and he suddenly stared at Furong's chest. What's wrong? Furong saw that his gaze was strange. She also looked at her chest but didn't find anything abnormal. It could be seen that Furong was already used to his actions. Yu Qianqiu shook his head solemnly and said, "That's not right. It seems to be a lot bigger than last time. What's going on?" "Really?" Furong suspiciously looked at her chest. Suddenly she caught a glimpse of Yu Qianqiu snickering. She immediately understood that he was teasing her again. Blushing, she threw the wine cup in her hand at him. Yu Qianqiu dodged to the side and grabbed her wrist, pulling her into his arms. He chuckled and said, "Look at you, a girl. How can you touch a man in broad daylight? Aren't you afraid of being seen by others?" Furong herself didn't know what was going on, but every time she was pulled into his embrace, she would feel as if her whole body had lost all its strength. He struggled weakly and said, "Who told you to always bully me?" "Nonsense, why would I bully you? If I say it's big, then it's big. You don't believe me? I'll bring you in for a checkup right now." Yu Qianqiu abruptly picked her up and walked into the room, causing Hibiscus to cry out in alarm again. "Quack! Scream! Scream! I'm the only one living here. Even if you shout yourself hoarse, no one will know." Not long after, the sound of two people fighting came from the room again. The two of them were lying on the bed with their clothes disheveled. Yu Qianqiu's fingers had already felt a moist spot. He wanted to explore it again, but the beauty beside him said, "No." Immediately, his fingers were clamped by the elastic thighs. Yu Qianqiu groaned in infinite sorrow. He pulled out his sinful hand and cursed in his heart, "Damn it! These days where I can see and touch but not eat are too torturous. Lousy, sex is emptiness, emptiness is sex. Amitba. I'll endure. Endure. Endure." The two of them lazily hugged each other. Furong suddenly asked, "When will you come back?" Yu Qianqiu answered half dead, "I don't know. I probably won't be back for a while." The two of them sank into silence again. The soft hand on Yu Qianqiu's chest suddenly rose up. She grabbed his trembling hand and pressed it on her plump breasts. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He turned his head and smiled bitterly. "I say, little sister. Big brother, I have already endured very hard. Don't seduce me anymore." Furong let out an almost inaudible sound. She whimpered, "I'll give it to you." "What did you say?" Yu Qianqiu sat up. His eyes swept back and forth across that alluring body. He said very seriously, "I'm very pure. It's very easy for me to believe other people's words. You must not speak carelessly. The God is watching. Repeat what you said just now. I didn't hear it clearly." Furong's face flushed red. She didn't dare to repeat it. She turned her graceful body to the side and didn't say another word. Yu Qianqiu laughed mischievously. He leaned over to her ear and asked, "You're not afraid anymore?" Furong softly replied, "Nga." Yu Qianqiu looked up to the sky and laughed wildly, "Cake seller. Long live Chairman Mao." Then he pounced on her as if he was starving. The spring night was bitter and short. The sun rose high in the sky. The hibiscus bloomed to express the feelings of spring. It was a splendid night. Only the two people in the room knew about it. Yu Qianqiu looked down at Furong's smooth and tender body. In his previous life he walked among flowers. He had plucked countless flowers. He was very experienced. But in this life he was still a virgin. He didn't expect Furong to take advantage of this era's essence. It wasn't easy. While she was sleeping soundly, Yu Qianqiu quietly got up and put on his clothes. Just as he turned around, he saw a pair of extremely bashful big eyes looking at him. He couldn't help but smile awkwardly. "You're awake?" He hated the sadness of parting. He wanted to sneak away. "Are you leaving? I'll send you." Furong picked up a piece of clothing to cover her chest. Suddenly she frowned. Biting her lips, she stubbornly got off the bed and put on her clothes. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the bed that was dotted with red spots. Then he looked at Furong's strange walking posture. He thought to himself, "Oh no, it was Furong's first night yesterday. I was a little too indulgent." He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "How are you going to send me off like this? Aren't you afraid that others will see through you? No. After walking a few steps, she also realized that something was wrong. She couldn't say the rest of her words. Yu Qianqiu walked downstairs to stop her. He gently whispered in her ear, "Be obedient. There's no need to send me off. I just want to tell you that I will always think of you. You just wait for me in Wanfen Garden. You have to work hard to cultivate. Do you understand?" "Yes." Farong nodded, feeling wronged. Yu Qianqiu gently pushed her away. He opened the door and flew straight to Penglai Pavilion on his sword. He faintly heard the sound of crying. In front of Penglai Pavilion, 5 nascent soul stage disciples and 10 core formation stage disciples led by Elder Quan of the Cultivation Pavilion were ready to leave. There were many onlookers. Yu Qianqiu saw his master Guan Weiwu waving at him from the crowd. He couldn't help but feel touched. This muddle-headed master actually remembered that he was leaving today. It was really rare. Thus, he happily ran over and bowed, saying, "Disciple will be leaving now. Master, please take care." I know. Guan Weiwu scratched his head and suddenly said with a voice transmission, "The leader, Quan Deming, is my junior brother. I have already told him that if you have any trouble you can look for him. He will help you." Yu Qianqiu thanked him and returned to the group. Suddenly he heard another voice transmission, "Humph. Farong didn't return last night. Did she spend the night at your place?" "Damn." It was father-in-law Fei's voice. Yu Qianqiu looked around and found Ferdinand, who was glaring at him in the crowd. He was stunned. He had already slept with his daughter. What else could he say? Yu Qianqiu bowed respectfully. After talking with the sect leader, Quan Deming and Elder Quan returned to the front of the group. He glanced at everyone and shouted in a deep voice, "Let's go!" With that, he took the lead and flew away on his sword. Swoosh swoosh. 15 flying swords shot out and 15 figures quickly followed. Below, countless people showed envious eyes. The wind whistled in Yu Qianqiu's ears. He slightly slowed down and looked back in the direction of the alchemy pavilion. He didn't know if that woman was still crying in his room. He felt guilty and exhaled. He suddenly turned back and his sword turned into a stream of light. He quickly chased after the group in front of him. Chapter 161. No one knew when the original Cultivation Alliance was from. To put it bluntly, it was just something with an undeserved reputation. This time it was different. An Kuang-tsung caused a series of troubles. In the end, everyone had to clean up after him. Even Fuxian Island was not at ease. In view of this, the major sects finally made up their minds to enrich the Cultivation Alliance and make it work. They could not always make everyone suffer because of one sect. There must be justice for everything. This was the purpose of the Cultivation Alliance. Of course, the so-called Cultivation Alliance was something created by the righteous sections. It had nothing to do with the demonic sections. There were probably hundreds of righteous sects in the entire Wuxia Empire. There were major sects like Fuxian Island that had tens of thousands of disciples. There were also small sects that only had one disciple. These small sects even had only one disciple. After discussion, the Cultivation Alliance would be managed by the top 10 sections. The executive director would be changed every year, and the top 10 sects would take turns taking charge. The purpose was naturally to ensure the so-called fairness. The first year was this year, starting from Fuxian Island. As for sects other than the top 10 sects, those who were willing to join the Cultivation Alliance would more or less send someone to be responsible for the liaison work. The top 10 sects would still play the leading role. In fact, there were many small sects that were unwilling to join. For them, the disadvantages were greater than the advantages. Not to mention the constraints, the small sects would not dare to cause trouble and ask the Cultivation Alliance to uphold justice. Who would be like An Kuang-tsung and run to provoke the demonic sect's evil blood devil palace? Wouldn't that be courting death? But they had to join. The top 10 sects issued a declaration. Any decent sects that did not join the Cultivation Alliance would have to pray for their own good if they encountered any trouble in the future. This meant that if they did not join, they would not be able to do anything alone. It would be very eye-catching and easy to be bullied. There would not even be anyone to help them. However, the top 10 sects did not blindly bully the small sections. For example, the Cultivation Alliance's normal operating expenses were completely shared by the top 10 sections. They would not let the small sects pay a single cent. The only requirement was that anyone who joined must obey the decisions made by the Cultivation Alliance. Otherwise, the consequences would be severe. For the sake of fairness, the Cultivation Alliance was not placed in any of the righteous sections. The 10 major sects jointly invested in a building in the 100 Flowers Valley, a place that was neither righteous nor demonic, to serve as the organization's headquarters. Yu Qianqiu and the others did not know about this at first. When they followed Quan Deming to the Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu was shocked. Why was the Cultivation Alliance here? Thinking about it, he felt relieved. It was probably only here that no one would have any objections. Otherwise, no one would feel at ease putting it in anyone's home. He didn't know what to do if he bumped into Yan Zixia again. This was something that Yu Qianqiu was a little worried about. After all, he had taken advantage of her, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 meals. He didn't even let go of her curvy body parts. It would be awkward to see him again. As the saying goes, what you fear will happen. As soon as they entered the Hundred Flowers Valley, although the palace master of the Hundred Flowers Valley didn't come personally, she sent a son, a daughter, and a group of disciples to welcome the guests. Everyone was in the cultivation world. Although supporting Immortal Island only had a dozen or so people, they represented a sect. Therefore they still had to show the necessary etiquette. As soon as they entered the valley, they saw an extraordinary young man and a beautiful woman standing at the city gate. Both of them cupped their fists and bowed to Quan Deming. Yan Zhuixing, Yan Zixia, I represent my mother to welcome the seniors from supporting Immortal Island. Quan Deming smiled and greeted them politely. He didn't dare to put on airs of the world's #1 sect in front of them. Others might not know, but how could he not know? The so-called mother was his senior sister, the daughter of his master's previous sect master, Guan Dinghai. As soon as Yu Qianqiu entered the city, he noticed Yan Zixia. Fortunately, he had always liked to keep a low profile. When he entered, he stood at the back. When the situation turned bad, he immediately hid behind everyone. He didn't know if the other party saw him or not. The people from supporting Immortal Island and the people who came to welcome them walked in. There were many people watching. They were all individual cultivators, both righteous and demonic. The righteous and demonic path in the Hundred Flowers Valley were free to come and go. Everyone was here to watch. After all, supporting Immortal Island was famous. They weren't like other sects who often had people outside. It was rare for supporting Immortal Island to send a group of people. It was inevitable that they wanted to see the glory of the world's #1 sect. The place where the Hundred Flowers Palace welcomed supporting Immortal Island was at the Hundred Flowers House. It wasn't the first time Yu Qianqiu had been here. When they arrived at the entrance of the Hundred Flowers House, the people from the other sects of the Cultivation Alliance had already arrived. There were hundreds of people waiting there. The leaders of the sects all came to say a few words to Quan Deming. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the crowd. There were quite a few familiar faces. He seemed to have seen the leader of the Moon Clan when he was in the Demon region. The few female disciples behind him were also very familiar. The leader of Ang Kuang Tsung was actually Lu Wanwan, an old acquaintance. The person behind him was even more familiar. It was Lu Jingguang, whom he had once stripped naked. Damn. This was going to be interesting. What day was it today? What a sin. Yu Qianqiu groaned in pain. His body shrank in the crowd. There was a saying that went, "You can hide now, but you can't hide forever." He was so big, and supporting Immortal Island was so eye-catching. Where could he hide? There was another saying that went even better, "Women are more careful than men." This was even more true. A female disciple of the Moon Clan glanced over and was stunned. Then she whispered something in the elder's ear. The elder of the Moon Clan's eyes lit up. He looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding behind the crowd, sneakily. The elder of the Moon Clan, Hua Rui, suddenly chuckled and said, "Elder Quan, I heard that your outstanding disciple Yu Qianqiu is also here." "Who is it? Can I have a look?" "Yu Qianqiu is here? Elder Quan, we have to ask him to come and see." The Daoyuo sect was also in an uproar. In the eyes of the other sects, they were a little surprised to see such a scene. Who was this Yu Qianqiu? He was so famous that even the first and second sects of the Orthodox sects were so eager to see him. Of course, they didn't know that the trial in the Demon region was a secret between the top 3 sects of the Orthodox and Devil sections. Ang Kuangsung's Lu Wanwan and Lu Jingguang exchanged a look. They were both confused. The name Yu Qianqiu was so familiar. Yan Zixia, who was standing at the entrance of the Hundred Flowers house, looked around the crowd of Fuxian Island and finally saw the familiar figure hiding behind the crowd. "Yu Qianqiu, come out and greet the seniors of the various sections." Quan Deming smiled and turned around. "Bitch, I'll sell you to Africa. Would it kill you to speak less?" Yu Qianqiu hated him to death. There were too many people. To prevent him from squeezing out, the disciples of Fuxian Island automatically made way for him, revealing his true appearance. He had no choice. He would be killed no matter what he did. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly at the crowd and walked over. Lu Wanqian and Lu Jingguang were shocked at the same time. There were many people with the same name and surname in this world, but if they had the same name and surname and also had the same appearance, then they could only be the same person. Moreover, Yu Qianzhou's name was rarely seen. The other On Kuang-tsung disciples also looked at Yu Qianzhou in shock. Lu Jingguang, who was still in shock, wanted to step out and question them. However, he was stopped by Lu Wanwan the moment he took a step out. Lu Wanwan shook his head gently and winked at the people of Supporting Immortal Island, hinting him not to be rash. Lu Jingguang looked at the people of the world's #1 sect and held back the impulse in his heart. He had no choice but to hold back. He heard that the people of Fuxian Island were all extraordinary. The elder in charge was at the tribulation stage and there were 5 late-stage nascent soul cultivators. On his side, the elder in charge was only at the mid-stage nascent soul realm. Although there were 5 nascent soul realm elders, they couldn't defeat them. This was the difference between the world's #1 and #5. The difference was huge. Chapter 162. Yu Qianzhou was most concerned about On Kuang-tsung's group. Their actions were all seen by him. It seemed that Fuxian Island's name was really famous. Just their signboard alone was enough to intimidate people. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. He already had an idea in his mind, so he immediately felt relaxed. Fuxian Island's core formation stage disciple, Yu Qianzhou, greets seniors. Yu Qianzhou smiled and cupped his hands at the people around him. Hua Rui giggled and said, "You are Yu Qianzhou? The last time I saw you, you were only at the foundation establishment stage, right? How long has it been? You have already broken through to the core formation stage. You are indeed an outstanding disciple of Fuxian Island." De Luo sect's principal elder was called Zhu Xianxian. Although he didn't go to the Demon Ghost region, he had heard of Yu Qianzhou. He immediately walked over with a smile and grabbed Yu Qianzhou's arm. He patted it and said, "You are indeed extraordinary, extraordinary." "Ah. Senior, you flatter me." Yu Qianzhou took this opportunity to quietly withdraw his hand. He did not have a good impression of the De Luo sect, and sooner or later, he would come looking for them to settle the score. As a man, there was no justice in not taking revenge. Everyone saw that the 3 sects were speaking in riddles. They didn't know what was so good about Yu Qianzhou. While they were wondering, Yu Qianzhou walked toward On Kuang-tsung with a smile. "Lu Wanqian, Lu Jingguang, long time no see. How have you been?" Yu Qianzhou stood in front of the two. His smile gradually turned into a sneer. The originally lively surroundings suddenly became silent. Anyone could see that Yu Qianzhou and On Kuang-tsung had a grudge. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called him by his name in public. Yan Zixia frowned. She had carefully investigated Yu Qianzhou's background and naturally knew that Yu Qianzhou used to be On Kuang-tsung's disciple. Now that he had joined another sect, it was taboo in the cultivation world. Why did he provoke him instead of hiding from On Kuang-tsung? Quan Deming was astonished as well. How did Yu Qianzhou get involved with the Blue Light School? He hoped that nothing bad would happen to him. Before this brat even arrived, many people had already greeted him and asked him to watch out for him. Guan Weiwu, Ferdinand, O Sihai, Feng Xiangtian, Guan Dinghai, and the old consecrator Ma Jiugu. Each of them had a higher rank than the other. Lu Wanxian's expression changed. He also didn't know what Yu Qianzhou was up to, but he definitely didn't want to have any conflict with Supporting Immortal Island. If it wasn't for Supporting Immortal Island, On Kuang-tsung would have already been eliminated by the Blood Demon Palace. He put on a smile and said, "This little brother from Supporting Immortal Island is called Yu Qianzhou, right? I don't think we know you." Hearing his words, Yan Zixia was stunned. Her brother Yan Zhuixing's eyes flickered as he glanced at the crowd. No one knew what he was thinking. "Yo, Elder Lu, you are really forgetful. I almost died in your hands back then. Have you forgotten so quickly?" "No, I'm afraid you think I'm already dead." Yu Qianzhou's tone was strange and aggressive. "Humph. I've never seen you before." Lu Wanxian ignored him and cupped his hands at Quan Deming. "Elder Quan, what is the meaning of this? Are you trying to bully us?" Looking at Lu Wanxian's secretive behavior, the people around them didn't say anything and just watched the show. However, On Kuang-tsung was embarrassed. No matter what, it was a big sect in the cultivation world. Yet, it was being pressured by a little disciple from Supporting Immortal Island. Lu Jingguang glared at him and trembled with anger. With his status in On Kuang-tsung, he had never been humiliated like this in public. Quan Deming stroked his beard and pondered. Yu Qianzhou said that he almost died in his hands back then. It seemed like they were enemies of life and death. This matter was a little troublesome. Yu Qianzhou wasn't an ordinary disciple. After thinking about it, he shouted, "Yu Qianzhou, don't mess around." Yu Qianzhou choked with anger. He paused and bowed to Quan Deming. Yes, Elder. When he turned around and saw Lu Jingguang, he couldn't help but mock him. You look like you want to bite me. Clean face and no beard. Who doesn't know that you were castrated by the demonic path? The whole An Kuang Tsung almost brought the destruction of the sect because of you. Why are you here pretending to be a pretty boy? The crowd was in an uproar. Not many people knew that Lu Jingguang was castrated. When Yu Qianqiu revealed it, it was a little shocking. Everyone knew his status in An Kuang Tsung. If that was the case, there was a reason why An Kuang Tsung went against the demonic path. The world's #1 sect was indeed the #1 sect. They even knew such a secret. Those sects who had participated in the demon-slaying conference organized by An Kuang Tsung immediately understood everything. An Kuang Tsung used the name of demon-slaying conference to take advantage of everyone for revenge. Those sects had more or less suffered great losses. Some sects were even directly destroyed by the demonic path. In an instant, countless hateful eyes stared at An Kuang Tsung and the others. Stop right there. Lu Jingguang was about to go crazy. With such a secret exposed, even a man wouldn't be able to withstand it. He immediately rushed out and was about to fight Yu Qianqiu. The two of them were very close to each other. Before anyone could react, Lu Jingguang and Yu Qianqiu had already engaged in close combat. The former punched the latter's head. Yu Qianqiu turned around and grabbed his arm with a backhand. With the other hand he punched his face twice quickly. Then he grabbed the back of his neck and raised his knee to hit him twice. Finally he pushed his hand away and raised his leg high, sending Lu Jingguang flying. Fortunately there were many people behind him. An Kuang Tsung's disciples had already caught him. However, his whole face had already become a bloody mess and he was unconscious. In fact, Yu Qianqiu had seen through Lu Jingguang's cultivation at a glance. He was only at the late stage of foundation establishment. Therefore he deliberately provoked him. He wanted him to make the first move and then find an excuse to beat him up. Who knew that this silly bird would be so angry that he actually wanted to have a one-on-one fight with him? Wasn't this courting death? One had to know that Yu Qianqiu had mingled in the underworld in his previous life. His position as the boss was obtained through punches and kicks. There was no need to mention his one-on-one experience. It wasn't a problem for him to fight several people at once. How could this An Kuang Tsung's eldest young master be his opponent? In the end, in just a few moves while everyone was still in a daze, Lu Jingguang had already been sent flying by a kick. People in the cultivation world were used to fighting with cultivation and spells. How many people would fight like this? Yu Qianqiu's movements were as smooth as flowing water. He was too skilled. He was simply too handsome. Everyone was dumbfounded. This Yu Qianqiu was worthy of being an outstanding disciple of supporting Immortal Island. He could even fight hand to hand. He was indeed not bad. The disciples of supporting Immortal Island were even more impressed. This Yu Qianqiu shocked everyone with just one move. He really made supporting Immortal Island proud. Actually, as a man, it was not bad to show off his masculine charm occasionally, especially when it came to fists and kicks. It was very lethal to women. For example, Yan Zixia and the female disciples of the Moon Clan were all amazed. Little bastard, you actually dared to hit me. Do you want to die? There were many unreasonable things in the world. It was not the first time that the villain first complained. For example, between the one who hit and the one who was hit, Yu Qianqiu shouted coldly and wanted to rush over to beat him up again. An Kuang Tsung and the others weren't useless. The grandson of the sect leader was beaten up because he didn't react in time. Now that he was beaten up again, he wouldn't be able to show his face in public anymore. Immediately, a few people drew their swords and pointed them at Yu Qianqiu. This time, supporting Immortal Island didn't want to be outdone. A few people flashed over and stood in front of Yu Qianqiu, pointing their swords at him. Chapter 163. How dare they make a move on the disciples of supporting Xian Island? The 5 nascent soul late-stage disciples looked at each other coldly with disdain. This was what the world's #1 sect was proud of. It immediately put a lot of pressure on An Kuang Tsung and the others. Once they made a move, they didn't even need to think about the consequences. Although the disciples of supporting Xian Island had a cruel competition on the island, they were able to stand out and come here. Naturally, they understood the mission they had to shoulder. How could they tarnish the reputation of supporting Xian Island when they were united against outsiders? Lu Wanqian held the unconscious Lu Jingguang, whose face was covered with blood, and said angrily, "Elder Quan, don't go too far with your supporting Xian Island." Quan Deming also felt that it was a little unreasonable to continue making trouble. On the first day of the Cultivation Alliance's operation, such a thing happened. If this matter was blown up, he wouldn't be able to explain himself when he returned. He immediately shouted in a deep voice, "All of you come back. Elder Quan, he was the one who hit me first. We can't let him go so easily." Yu Qianqiu pointed at the unconscious Lu Jingguang and said, "It seemed like he wouldn't let him go unless he killed him." "You shut up." Quan Deming was really having a headache. No matter where this kid went, he seemed to be doing some soul-stirring things, but he couldn't do anything to him. Seeing that Quan Deming was angry, Yu Qianqiu and the 5 nascent soul stage disciples returned behind him. Quan Deming cupped his hands at Lu Wanqian and said, "Elder Lu, it's our supporting Xian Island's lack of discipline. I hope you can give me face and let this matter go. Don't take it to heart." Lu Wanqian's face was gloomy. He snorted coldly and didn't say anything. It was really hard for him to say anything. Although it was the other party's disciple who started it, it was his own disciple who made the first move. However, no matter what, his strength was still inferior to the other party. Otherwise, how could he let it go? The cultivation world had always been one where the strong would not yield to the weak. Also, Quan Deming had personally apologized. They had to give him face. Yan Juexing, who was at the entrance of 100 Flowers' house, saw that the situation had calmed down. He waved his hand and a few people went over to Ong Kwangsung's side to carry the unconscious Lu Jingguang for treatment. At the same time, Ong Kwangsung sent 2 disciples to follow. If someone were to question why the members of the Flower Palace didn't come out and reconcile when the matter had just occurred, then why would they not? That would truly be wronging them. As long as they didn't offend them, the Flower Palace would never participate in the disputes of any sect. This was the foundation of the Flower Palace's foothold in the cultivation world. After this incident, Yu Qianqiu became famous in the cultivation world. From today onwards, the news of supporting Immortal Island's disciple Yu Qianqiu beating up Ong Kwangsung's sect master's grandson spread throughout the cultivation world. Yan Juexing acted as if he had never seen what had just happened. He smiled and cupped his hands at everyone. "The Flower Palace has prepared wine in the backyard of 100 Flowers' house to welcome our esteemed guests who have come from afar. Please." The sects thanked him. Under the guidance of the Flower Palace's disciples, they passed through the hall and arrived at the backyard of 100 Flowers' house. A banquet had already been prepared. The fine wine was accompanied by the fragrance of flowers. It was indeed worthy of the Flower Palace's name. The principal elders of the 10 major sects were arranged to sit at a table. 9 of them were smiling. Only Lu Wanwan didn't look good. Anyone who encountered such an incident would be in a bad mood. The disciples of the other sects found their seats and sat down. Yu Qianqiu and the other 9 core formation stage disciples of his sect sat at a table. Yan Juexing, who was greeting the guests, glanced over and was slightly stunned. He turned around thoughtfully and continued to greet the guests. A small detail caught his attention. When Yu Qianqiu and the others sat at a table, the other 9 people seemed to be waiting for Yu Qianqiu. After Yu Qianqiu sat down, the other 9 people sat down as well. It wasn't easy to tell that they weren't paying attention. Although the palace lord of the Flower Palace didn't come personally, she didn't slack in her etiquette. The 2 siblings personally toasted each table. When it came to Yu Qianqiu's table, Yu Qianqiu quickly glanced at Yan Zixia and saw that she was completely unperturbed, so he simply acted as if nothing had happened. The fact that Yan Zixia was cultivating on supporting Immortal Island was something that very few people in the entire island knew about. Aside from Yu Qianqiu, even Quan Deming didn't know about it. Naturally, no one else knew about it. During the meal, the host warmly welcomed them and exchanged toasts. The atmosphere was good. Although many people had reached the stage of fasting and didn't need to eat anything, relying on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to maintain their vitality, as long as they were human, they couldn't avoid following the ancient rules. After all, they weren't immortals. After the banquet, everyone came to a rather remote place in the 100 Flower Valley after eating and drinking to their heart's content. There was a large house that stood there. On the main door, there was a jade plaque with the words Cultivation Alliance carved on it. The inside had obviously been renovated. There were many small courtyards. After the sects had allocated their residences, their respective elders gathered together and went to the Flower Palace to greet the palace lord to thank her for her hospitality. If it was someone else, they wouldn't have to do this. The 10 major sects were already giving them face by eating. But what kind of background did the Flower Palace have? Everyone knew that this was a place that both the orthodox and demonic sects had to give face to. Moreover, they were going to be in someone else's territory in the future. How could they not greet the palace lord? However, if it wasn't for Yu Qianqiu and the other disciples, what was the point? It wasn't like they were going to steal someone else's territory. They didn't have the qualifications to meet the palace lord. After Quan Deming left, a nascent soul disciple named Chui Siping took care of the group from supporting Immortal Island. Yu Qianqiu wandered around the garden twice and was really bored. He found Chui Siping and asked for leave. He wanted to go to the 100 Flowers Valley for a walk, but Chui Siping said, no. The core formation disciples were afraid of him, but Chui Siping, who was in the late nascent soul stage, didn't care about him. Yu Qianqiu couldn't do anything even if he ran into a wall, so he could only accompany everyone in the garden and count their hairs. After waiting for half a day, Quan Deming finally returned. Yu Qianqiu was happy that he could finally ask for leave and go for a walk. Unexpectedly, he threw out a large pile of jade tablets and asked everyone to inject a wisp of true origin into it. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. There were hundreds of jade archives, and he needed to inject a wisp of true origin into each one. That was quite a lot. At his level of cultivation, it wasn't easy to refine spiritual qi into a wisp of true origin that he could skillfully control. Everyone's expressions changed. How much spiritual qi did he need to absorb to recover after using up so much true origin? The higher one's cultivation, the more spiritual qi he needed to recover. This wasn't something that was used up in a fight. Taking a few qi replenishing pills would just take some time to recover. Instead, it was something that was completely cut off from the dantian. It was like a withered seedling of rice that could grow with a little water, but if you uprooted the seedling, it would be useless no matter how much water you fed it. Yu Qianqiu was considered lucky. He had enough spirit stones to support him, but it was really difficult to refine true origin to the point where he could skillfully control it. Otherwise, with so many top-grade spirit stones, his cultivation would have been blown to the end of the tribulation passing stage long ago. Why would he still be in the core formation stage? The group of people formed a circle. With Quan Deming in the lead, they passed the tablets one by one and took turns inputting them. After a round, the tablets returned to his hands. The sky had already darkened. He took the tablets and went out again, instructing everyone not to go out. Actually, there was no need for him to instruct them. Everyone's spirits were already low. A few to the east and a few to the west sat cross-legged in the garden. Each of them took out a vitality pill and prepared to replenish their spiritual qi. Suddenly, everyone felt the garden brighten. They looked towards the source of the light. They saw a faint layer of white light enveloping Yu Qianqiu's hand. In his palm was a handful of vitality pills. There were probably more than 10 of them. Just from the appearance of the pills, it was obvious that they were much better than the pills everyone else was using. Everyone sighed inwardly. As expected of the Alchemy Pavilion's principal elder's direct disciple. Even the pills he took were rarely seen by ordinary disciples. It was no wonder his cultivation improved so quickly. While everyone was feeling envious, they suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu staring at the pills in his palm. He sighed and muttered, "Damn it. I hate eating this thing the most. I don't even know how much I've eaten these past few years." As he said that, he frowned and swallowed a few mouthfuls of pills. Then he took out another handful and swallowed it. He hadn't eaten this thing for a long time. Hard things were really uncomfortable when they went into his stomach. Top-grade spirit stones were what he liked the most. Not only were they full of spiritual qi, they were also very convenient. However, he couldn't take them out and use them in front of everyone. Wouldn't that be too frightening? The group of disciples looked at the pills in their hands again. Their faces twitched non-stop. They all had the urge to throw them away. Chapter 164. When Quan Deming returned, there were only 15 jade archives left in his hands. After giving one to each of them, he told the disciples, "From today onwards, the main gate of the Cultivation Alliance will be guarded by disciples below the nascent soul stage. 2 people will guard the main gate every day." The jade archives in everyone's hands were the entry jade archives. After all, there were hundreds of disciples from each sect here. If an unfamiliar person entered, they could ask the other party to show them their jade archives. If the jade archives in the other party's hands contained their primordial qi, they would naturally be allowed to enter. Otherwise they could refuse entry. After some arrangements, Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was below the nascent soul stage, so he naturally couldn't escape the misfortune of guarding the main gate. He and a core-bearing disciple named Xiong Hui were in the same group. In other words, once it was their turn, the 2 of them would guard the main gate together. Yu Qianqiu never expected that one day he would be reduced to the point of guarding the main gate. However, after thinking about it, it wasn't a big deal. With so many people from each sect taking turns, it wouldn't happen more than 3 times a year. He could just muddle through it. After everyone was given an entry token, Quan Deming finally lifted the ban on everyone. However, he had a request that they couldn't cause trouble for no reason. They could only stay in the 100 Flowers Valley and couldn't leave the valley without permission. Violators would be severely punished. Yu Qianqiu had long wanted to go out for a stroll. It was too boring to stay here. After everyone dispersed, he walked straight out of the garden on Fuxin Island. When he was about to step out of the main gate of the Cultivation Alliance, he suddenly heard someone shouting Yu Qianqiu from behind. He turned around and saw that it was none other than Xiong Hui, who was in the same group as him. Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked curiously, "Senior Xiong, are you looking for me?" Xiong Hui laughed and said, "From now on we'll be in the same group." He pointed at the two disciples who had already appeared at the main gate. "Oh." Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said, "Please take care of me in the future, Senior Xiong." Xiong Hui eagerly followed him because he wanted to befriend him. He didn't dare to put on airs. Moreover, it was uncertain who would be taking care of who. He immediately waved his hand and said, "Junior brother you are too polite. We should take care of each other. By the way, it's already so late, I wonder where junior brother is going?" Yu Qianqiu couldn't figure out what this guy was up to. He laughed it off and said, "I'm bored. I heard that the night market in the 100 Flowers Valley is pretty good, so I want to go and have a look. What about you, senior brother?" "Ha, that's exactly what I was thinking. Since that's the case, why don't we go for a stroll and invite junior brother for a drink or two?" Xiong Hui said with a smile. "Looks like he wants to make friends with me." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "How can I let senior brother spend money? Junior brother should be the one treating." Xiong Hui smiled and said, "It's all the same, it's all the same. Junior brother, don't be so polite with me today. It won't be too late to invite me next time." After saying that, he straightforwardly pulled Yu Qianqiu out, and the latter could only helplessly follow. When the two of them reached the door, the two disciples guarding the door suddenly bowed together and said, "Senior Yu." Both Yu Qianqiu and Xiong Hui were stunned. They stopped to size up the two of them and saw that they were only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, "Which sect are you from? How do you know me?" The one on the left said respectfully, "We're disciples from the Jiuhua sect. Today we met senior at the 100 Flowers Valley." "Oh, I see." Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. He couldn't figure out what kind of sect this Jiuhua sect was, but it was definitely not one of the top 10 sections. Otherwise he would definitely have heard of it. Therefore he reached into his storage bag and took out 2 essence chi pills and said, "This is our first meeting and I didn't bring anything. Take these 2 essence chi pills as a greeting gift for the two of you." As he said that, he threw one over. After the 2 disciples guarding the door caught it, they were immediately stunned. The 2 of them came from a small, unranked sect, so they had never seen an essence chi pill of such quality. It was cold to the touch and had a hazy white pill halo. Normally, an ordinary essence chi pill cost 50 low-grade spirit stones, which was enough to cover the spirit stones that the sect gave them every month. Therefore, essence chi pills were not something that disciples from small sects like them could afford. For a pill of this quality, the price would probably double. When the 2 of them came back to their senses, they realized that Yu Qianqiu and the other person had already walked far away. They couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh. The number 1 sect in the world was indeed not something that ordinary sects could compare to. In fact, it was the first time that Xiong Hui had seen this kind of essence chi pill with a pill halo, let alone them. He was also deeply moved. Who said that auxiliary sects were not as good as the Cultivation Pavilion? If he had known earlier, he would have joined the Alchemy Pavilion back then. The 2 of them chatted as they strolled to the night market in the 100 Flowers Valley. They saw that everywhere was filled with sparkling fluorescent stones. Under the dim light of the night, the entire night market was particularly enchanting. Looking around, the people wandering around, whether they were from the righteous path or the demonic path, were all leisurely and contented. There was no shouting and killing scene like in the outside world. Xiong Hui couldn't help but sigh and say, "It would be great if the entire cultivation world could live in peace like this." Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and faintly smiled. Live in peace. Whether it was the secular world or the cultivation world, people were selfish. If everyone was selfish, then there would definitely be disputes. Unless everyone held the lofty ideal of starving to death and raising their birds to the sky, the waves would still be there. However, when he saw the night market in the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu felt a lot more emotional. He thought back to when he kidnapped Guan Yu and brought him here for the sake of his foundation establishment. Then he took in Qin Feng here and finally he and Chu Ping fell in love at the 100 Flowers Valley. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. In this situation, how can we not drink a few cups to liven things up? Junior brother Yu, where do you think we should go to drink a few cups? Xiong Hui's words pulled Yu Qianqiu back from his thoughts. He casually said, I didn't expect senior brother to be so easygoing. Let's go to the 100 Flowers Valley. With that said, he walked in the direction of the 100 Flowers Valley. 100 Flowers Valley? Xiong Hui was stunned. He reached for the storage bag on his waist and thought to himself, I heard that the food and wine of the 100 Flowers Valley are extremely expensive. Presumably, these spirit stones should be enough. Alright, it's rare to come here, so I'll pretend to be rich today. He hurried a few steps and followed Yu Qianqiu into the 100 Flowers Valley. The two of them found a seat by the window and sat down. They could also enjoy the beautiful scenery of the night market. When the waiter of the 100 Flowers Valley saw that the guests had arrived, he eagerly ran over to ask what the two of them wanted. Xiong Hui smiled generously and said, Junior brother, just order whatever you want to eat. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He didn't stand on ceremony and said without thinking, there's no need to order. Just eat whatever you want. Waiter, give me 2 pots of good 100 Flowers Valley wine and 5 servings of good meat and vegetable dishes. That's all for now. If it's not enough, we'll talk about it later. With that said, he looked out of the window in a daze. Please wait a moment. Seeing that they were rich customers, the waiter quickly left with a smile. Xiong Hui, on the other hand, felt a little weak from Yu Qianqiu's good 2 times in a row. He couldn't help but reach for his storage bag again. Not long after, the waiter came back and forth twice and brought their food and wine. He respectfully invited the two of them to enjoy. The two of them picked up their chopsticks and tasted the food a few times. Xiong Hui looked at the table filled with 10 delicately cooked meat and vegetable dishes. He thought that the 100 Flowers Valley really lived up to its name. But for some reason, although the food tasted good, the more he ate, the more uncomfortable he felt. He felt like he was sweating. Yu Qianqiu was a person who never got tired of eating. As long as he could afford it, he would never mistreat himself when it came to food. He never thought about the price. It was fine as long as it was worth it. Of course, this was related to his wealth. However, he didn't know that Xiong Hui's hand under the table was about to tear his storage bag. Did you guys hear? Ong Kwangsung's grandson was beaten up today. Hearing people talking about Ong Kwangsung, Yu Qianqiu turned his head and glanced at the 4 people who had just sat down at a table. Seeing that they were dressed quite well, they must be rich. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to come to the 100 Flowers Valley. He turned his head and listened while eating. This matter has already spread throughout the 100 Flowers Valley today. How could I not know? I heard that it was a disciple called Yu Qianqiu from Supporting Immortal Island who beat him up. The #1 sect in the world is indeed not a boast. Just this disciple alone shocked Ong Kwangsung and the others. They didn't even dare to fight back. That goes without saying. Ong Kwangsung provoked the Blood Demon Palace and almost brought about the destruction of his sect. If it wasn't for Supporting Immortal Island, Ong Kwangsung would have long been erased from the cultivation world. Yeah, I heard that too. Supporting Immortal Island is really amazing. Speaking of which, I know this Ong Kwangsung's Lu Jingguang. A few years ago, he became Dao companions with a female disciple of his sect for dual cultivation. Seeing that his grandfather is the sect master of Ong Kwangsung, my father even brought me to Ong Kwangsung to congratulate him on his new year. TSK. Who knew that Lu Jingguang had already been castrated by the devil path? Damn it. How dare a eunuch pretend to do dual cultivation? What a pity for that beautiful female disciple. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and said indifferently, I'm not an expert. I'm the villain that you guys were talking about just now, Yu Qianqiu. As soon as he said this, the 4 of them looked at each other. Indeed, the gods were watching from above. Fortunately, they didn't say anything bad about him behind his back. Otherwise it would be a mess. One must know that although the 4 great clans were quite powerful, they paled in comparison to Fuxian Island. Bai Zicong was stunned. He quickly bowed and said, the 4 of us talked too much. We didn't know you were here. Please forgive us, senior. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, I don't like to be secretive. What's done is done. There's no need to forgive us. It's just hitting someone. Some people were asking for it. Since I dared to hit them, I'm not afraid of others talking about it. Moreover, the 4 of you didn't say anything bad about me. What's wrong with that? Wasn't it just hitting someone? What a big tone. The 4 of them smiled unnaturally. They thought to themselves, only the disciples of Fuxian Island have such a tone. Ong Kwangsung is ranked 6th in the righteous path. There aren't many that they can afford to offend. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stir up the entire cultivation world. Even one of the 4 great clans can't match up to them. It's fate that brought us together. I Yuchencho love to make friends. Why don't we have a drink together? I wonder if the 4 of you are willing to do me the honor? Yuchencho smiled. 3 of the 4 looked at Bai Zizong. The latter was a little hesitant. He didn't know what Yuchencho wanted to do. It was necessary to be on guard when traveling in the cultivation world. Yuchencho could tell that Bai Zizong was the leader of the 4. He smiled faintly and said, "Don't the 4 of you want to give me a chance to flatter the 4 great clans?" His words were a little harsh. It was already good enough that the disciples of Fuxian Island didn't do whatever they wanted in the cultivation world. Was there a need to flatter others? At the same time, it was a reminder to the 4 of them. Bai Zizong cupped his hands awkwardly and said, "Then I shall accept your invitation." Yuchencho nodded and shouted, "Boss." The waiter who was serving the dishes hurried over and asked what was the matter. "Prepare a good private room and the best banquet in 100 Flower House. Hurry, I have to entertain these guests." Yuchencho waved his hand. The waiter looked at the dishes and asked, "What about the dishes on this table?" Yuchencho pointed at the table and then the table he was sitting at. "Put it on me. You go do what you need to do. By the way." He changed the topic and stopped the waiter. "This table of food and wine hasn't been touched yet. Go to the night market outside and find 4 cultivators who are currently living in poverty. Tell them that 100 Flowers House made a table of food and wine and invited them to taste it for free. You have to explain to them that after tasting it, they have to evaluate the taste of 100 Flowers House's food and wine. Don't say that it's free, understand?" The waiter was stunned. He scratched his head. He had never seen such a strange customer. Seeing that he didn't respond, Yuchencho said in a low voice, "What? Is my request too much? Don't tell me that you don't know which cultivators are living in poverty after being in 100 Flower House for so long." I understand. You are doing this out of kindness." The waiter smiled apologetically and retreated. He went to the counter and said a few words to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper looked over in surprise and nodded. The waiter ran out like a wisp of smoke. After a short while, the waiter led 4 cultivators in shabby clothes over with expressions of pleasant surprise on their faces. "Everyone, let's stand aside for a while. Don't disturb their appetite." Yuchencho smiled and walked away with them. The manager of the 100 Flowers House walked out of the counter and said with a smile, "So it's Mr. Yu. Did you book the best banquet in the 100 Flowers House?" During the day he had seen Yuchencho beat someone up in front of everyone, so he naturally recognized him. Yuchencho nodded and didn't say anything. The shopkeeper smiled. "Our best banquet costs 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. It will take some time to prepare. Please wait for a moment." 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for a banquet? Everyone was shocked. Even the 4 clans were no exception. Yuchencho frowned and said coldly, "Shopkeeper, are you reminding me? Are you worried that I can't afford it?" "You guessed right." The shopkeeper was afraid that he couldn't afford it and specially came to remind him so that everyone wouldn't feel awkward. There was no need to talk about supporting Immortal Island's wealth. However, Yuchencho was only a core formation realm disciple. How could he take out 1,000 high-grade spirit stones? If he thought about it, he definitely wouldn't say it out loud. He smiled apologetically. No, Mr. You misunderstood. Please follow me to the private room upstairs and wait for a moment." After he finished speaking, he personally led the way. He thought to himself, "You're a disciple of supporting Immortal Island, so it's not good for me to offend you. However, if you can't take out the money when it's time to settle the bill, then it's not my problem. Naturally, someone will come looking for your supporting Immortal Island." Chapter 166. The second floor was for the guest rooms where Yuchencho had stayed before. Nobody knew what the 3rd floor was for. They followed the innkeeper all the way to the top floor at the 4th floor. They pushed open an antique red sandalwood carved wooden door, and a bright and spacious private room appeared in front of them. The innkeeper asked them to wait for a while, then left with a smile. They peeked through the window and looked out. As there were no taller buildings around, the 100 Flowers Valley was right in front of them under the dim light of the night. If it was during the day, it would be a different scene. He then looked at the furnishings around the room. Every single one of them was exquisitely crafted, quiet, and emitted a faint sense of elegance and nobility. The night breeze blew over, bringing with it the faint fragrance of 100 flowers. There was also a bed for Xiao Tian in the inner room, and a small isolated room for convenience and bathing. The so-called private room was a luxurious suite that could allow people to rest in peace. I didn't expect there to be such a good place in the 100 Flowers Valley. Xionghui was a little surprised. He was relaxed now, and the bills downstairs were all taken care of by Yu Qianqiu. As for the matter of fighting to treat them, he would not even mention it. As expected of a private room. Bai Zizong looked around and nodded. Suddenly he shook his head and said, "It's just that we can't afford to let seniors spend so much money. 1,000 top-grade spirit stones is too much. That's nothing. I've been to all the luxurious places in my previous life." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand calmly and said, "Let's not talk about money tonight. This thing is a bastard, it's too disappointing to talk about it." They were speechless. Soon after, the door was pushed open and 6 beautiful women in palace attire entered, carrying wine utensils and dishes in a single file. After going in and out a few times, they filled the bright table inside and respectfully invited them to take a seat. After they were seated, a woman poured wine for each of them. Yu Qianqiu frowned and waved his hand saying, "You may leave. We have something to discuss and we don't want anyone to disturb us." "Yes." The ladies bowed and put down the wine jugs in their hands. The woman behind Yu Qianqiu untied a golden bell from the necklace around her neck and gently placed it on the table. She said softly, "If the honored guest has something to summon us, just ring this bell." Yu Qianqiu turned around and saw that there was another bell on her necklace. He nodded and dismissed the women. "Oh my God! What are these things? They actually cost 1,000 top-grade spirit stones." Xionghui exclaimed as he poked his chopsticks. "No matter how expensive it is, it's just food, a gimmick to make money." Yu Qianqiu gestured with his hand and said, "Let's eat and talk." They would be letting themselves down if they didn't try such expensive dishes. The few of them ate a few dishes. They tasted each other a few times but they could not find anything special. As they chatted, they became familiar with each other and started calling each other brothers. Jing Zuo, Wu Liqing and Tan Fei also introduced themselves. When he found out that the 4 of them were the heirs of the 4 major clans, Yu Qianqiu was not too surprised. Ordinary people would not go to 100 Blossom's house. Yu Qianqiu had something on his mind. After they got to know each other, he put down his wine cup and asked, "Brother Bai, I heard you talking about On Kuangtsung Lu Jingguang's dual cultivation. You said that his Taoist companion is very beautiful. I'm really curious, who is it that actually became a Taoist companion with a eunuch?" Bai Zizong pointed to Tan Fei and said, "You'll have to ask him. He said he's met her." Tan Fei smiled and said, "A few years ago I followed my father to On Kuangtsung and met her. That woman is a disciple of On Kuangtsung. She's really pretty. As for her name, I can't remember it." Yu Qianqiu's heart sank, but on the surface he smiled and said, "Brother Tan, you may not know this, but I've always been more interested in stunning beauties. Brother Tan, please think carefully about her name. If there's a chance, I'll go to On Kuangtsung and have a look. Other people are afraid of On Kuangtsung, but I'm not. You even dared to hit the head's grandson, so naturally you wouldn't be afraid." The few of them looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile that said, "I'll support you." "I see. Let me think about it." Tan Fei held his wine glass and thought for a long time before he said, "Oh, I can't remember her full name, but I think her surname is Su." "Is her surname really Su? Are you sure you remember it correctly?" Yu Qianqiu continued to ask. Now that he thought about it, he remembered that On Kuangtsung had a pretty female disciple with the surname Su. Tan Fei frowned again and thought about it. He nodded and said, "It should be right. At that time, I heard a few female disciples of On Kuangtsung calling her senior sister Su." After getting his confirmation, Yu Qianqiu's heart instantly relaxed. He raised his glass and smiled at everyone. "All right, I'll remember it. On Kuangtsung beauty with the surname Su, if there's a chance you must go and meet her. Don't let that eunuch take advantage of you. Come, let's have a toast." As soon as he let it go, the atmosphere among everyone changed. They let go of their stomachs and ate to their heart's content. The 6 of them ate until late at night before they were ready to leave. The golden bell rang and the 6 women entered. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Bill, please." The other 5 were shocked when they heard that. They then remembered that the dishes cost 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones. Even Bai Zizong and the other 3 from the 4 families felt the pinch. Not long after, the innkeeper ran in and smiled respectfully, "Mr. Yu, including the 2 tables below, the total is 1,000 orders and 35 upper-grade spirit stones. You are a VIP, so the 2 tables below are free of charge. Please come again in the future. Just pay 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones. The 100 Flowers house is really rich. 35 superior grade spiritual stones is waved just like that. Yu Qianqiu sneered and took out another storage pouch from his storage pouch. He threw it over and said, "You check if it's 1,000 upper rank spirit stones and see if I'm missing anything." "Yes, yes, yes." The innkeeper caught the storage bag and nodded. He inserted his divine sense into the bag and was shocked. There were indeed 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones in it. He smiled apologetically. "Please wait for a moment, Mr. Yu. I'll empty the storage bag for you." Xiong Hui was speechless. He was prepared to dine and dash with Yu Qianqiu. He did not expect him to really take out 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones. Oh my. This was not just any ordinary kind of money. Bai Zitsong and the other three did not know the details. They only dared to eat a meal that cost 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones because they trusted the reputation of the supporting Xian Island. Now that they had paid so much money, the four of them exchanged glances and thought to themselves, the disciples of the supporting Xian Island are indeed extraordinary. They did not even blink when they paid 1,000 superior grade spiritual stones. Forget it. You can waive 35 superior grade spiritual stones from me. I don't care about this broken storage bag. Yu Qianqiu said and walked out. If it was any other time he would ask for it back even if it was a piece of inferior grade spiritual stone. He would not pretend to be generous when he was stingy. However, he was really happy today. After knowing that Lu Jingguang's cultivation partner was not Chu Ping'er, he felt relieved. In fact, he was really afraid that the woman he was in love with would betray him. There was another reason. He had made friends with the direct descendants of the four major families in the cultivation world. He had spent a lot of money. How could he be embarrassed over a storage bag? Innkeeper Qin, which esteemed guest booked the best banquet in the 100 Flowers residence. Why don't you introduce him to me? Yu Qianqiu had only taken a few steps when a person's voice suddenly came from outside. Yan Zhuixing walked in with a smile on his face. When the latter saw Yu Qianqiu, he cupped his hands and said happily, "I was wondering which esteemed guest it was." "It's Brother Yu." "Brother Yan." Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands. Yan Zhuixing frowned at the innkeeper and said, "Innkeeper Qin, how much did you take from Brother Yu?" Innkeeper Chen handed over the storage bag in his hand respectfully and said, "Innkeeper Chen, how much did you take from Brother Yu?" "Nonsense." Yan Zhuixing took the storage bag and shouted, "Innkeeper Chen, seeing that you didn't know, I won't pursue this matter. But remember, Brother Yu is my friend. In the future, as long as Brother Yu comes to the 100 Flowers residence, all the expenses will be on me. Do you hear me?" Innkeeper Chen nodded. Yan Zhuixing snorted and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile. "Brother Yu, if you treat me as a friend, please take back the spiritual stones." Yu Qianqiu crossed his arms and smiled, not saying a word. He glanced at the shopkeeper and the master, his eyes narrowing. "Friends? It seems like this is the first time we've interacted and spoken. I've interacted with your sister before. This way we can't be considered as friends but as relatives. This brat is interesting. He didn't come earlier or later. He just had to come after I paid. It seems like it's already the middle of the night. He's really punctual. This brat knows how to conduct himself. Interesting." Chapter 167. Brother Yin, you're too kind. How can you eat without paying? Yu Qianqiu extended his hand to stop the spiritual stones. "You can't say that. I feel like old friends with Brother Yu and I really want to be friends with you. A banquet is nothing. If Brother Yu thinks highly of me and is willing to be friends with me, then please take back the spiritual stones," Yan Zhuixing said with sincerity. "Damn it. Money is a bastard. Money is a bastard." Yu Qianqiu turned around and looked at Bai Zitsong and the others. He smiled and said, "It's my honor to be friends with Brother Yan. If that's the case, then I'll accept it." He took back the spiritual stones and stuffed them into his storage pouch. Yan Zhuixing nodded with a smile. He looked at Xiong Hui and the others and asked, "Brother Yu, who are they?" "This is my senior brother and these four are my good friends." Yu Qianqiu didn't want to reveal the identity of Bai Zitsong and the others, so he just casually said it. The 5 people behind him cupped their hands at Yan Zhuixing and didn't say anything. Yan Zhuixing didn't mind at all and cupped his hands. "Since you're Brother Yu's friends, then you're my friends too. I'm Yan Zhuixing. Friends, feel free to drop by whenever you're free. I'll pay for all your expenses." After they thanked him again, they knew that it was all thanks to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked out of the window and said regretfully, "It's a pity that it's getting late. We'll have to leave now. We'll come again next time. Please forgive us, Brother Yin." Yan Zhuixing nodded and smiled. Since you're in a hurry to go back, I won't force you to stay. Please. The group of people went downstairs politely. Yan Zhuixing sent them to the entrance of the 100 Flowers house before they said goodbye. After watching them leave, Yan Zhuixing turned around and looked around the room. Seeing that there were no more guests, the smile on his face disappeared in the blink of an eye. His expression was cold and indifferent. Shopkeeper Chen, who was behind him, said, I can't believe you Qianqiu can really take out 1,000 spiritual stones. Didn't you see what happened today? Yan Zhuixing sneered. A core formation realm disciple can make the Daluo sect and the Moon clan so friendly. He's worth more than 1,000 top-grade spiritual stones. Also, under the watchful eyes of all the major sects, he beat up the grandson of the Qingguang school's leader. Was this something a normal completion-level disciple could do? You Qianqiu, who are you? Shopkeeper Chen nodded and said, now that you mention it, it's really strange. Even for the wealthy supporting Immortal Island, a normal core formation cultivator would not be able to take out 1,000 high-quality spirit stones. Uncle Chen, there's something you need to investigate. Yan Zhuixing turned around, looked outside and slowly said, I don't believe that you Qianqiu would spend 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for a few ordinary friends. Didn't you say that he just met those 4 people in the lobby downstairs? Find out the background of those 4 people. Bai Zitsong and the other 3 insisted on sending them off. The other 2 couldn't refuse. The 6 of them walked to the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance and were about to go their separate ways. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands. Okay, I'll stop here. I just settled here and there are a lot of things I don't know yet. I won't invite you in. Today was supposed to be my treat, but someone stole my thunder. Since we're brothers, I won't stand on ceremony. I'll make it up to you next time. The 4 of them came from influential families, so they had seen a lot of hypocrisy. Yu Qianqiu's frankness caused the 4 of them to become much closer. The 4 of them looked at each other and smiled. Bai Zitsong laughed. We've eaten a lot of good stuff. But this is the first time we've had a banquet that costs 1,000 spiritual stones. That Yan Zhuixing. He admires brother Yu a lot. Yeah. He just paid the bill and he's already helping me save money. His admiration is timely. But I think he admires the 4 of you too. Yu Qianqiu sighed and winked at the 4 of them. It's so easy talking to smart people. Don't? Bai Zitsong waved his hand and smiled. Our 4 families can't compare to your Fuxian Island. Such admiration should be left to brother Yu alone. I'd rather be stupid. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep at night. The 4 of them burst into laughter. Only Xionghui smiled. He didn't know what the 5 of them were talking about and what they were laughing about. The 4 families also had shops in the 100 Flowers Valley. They didn't have to worry about not having a place to stay. They made an appointment with Yu Qianqiu to meet again next time and went their separate ways. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Xionghui, then at the 4 of them. He shook his head slightly. The next day, Quan Deming and the elders of the various sects were busy. No one knew what they were discussing. Yu Qianqiu spent some effort to get rid of Xionghui. He wandered around the market in the 100 Flowers Valley. He realized that it wasn't a bad thing that the Cultivation Alliance was located in the 100 Flowers Valley. If Utopia needed anything, he could purchase it here. They casually walked to a stall selling talismans. The stall owner was an old man with a smile on his face. Yu Qianqiu sized him up and discovered that he was actually still in the middle stage of the foundation building realm despite his age. He then pointed at the talisman papers on the stall and asked, Did you make all the talisman papers here yourself? The old man realized that he couldn't see through the cultivation of the young man in front of him. He immediately nodded and said yes. How much are you selling these talismans? Yu Qianqiu asked. The old man was stunned. He smiled apologetically. Sir, you're mistaken. I only sell talismans here. I don't sell white talismans. Yu Qianqiu frowned. Why not? Don't you want to earn spirit stones by setting up a stall? The old man chuckled. I won't hide it from you. I spent a lot of time and effort to make these talismans. If I offer a high price, you won't be happy. If I offer a low price, the profit will be too low. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted him. Don't be long-winded. Name a price that you're willing to sell. Since you said so, I'll tell you. The old man spread out 4 different colored talismans on the stall. Level 1 white talismans cost 10 low-grade spirit stones. Level 2 white talismans cost 1 low-grade spirit stone. Level 3 white talismans cost 1 mid-grade spirit stone. As for level 4 white talismans, you must know that the materials used are not ordinary. They cost 50 mid-grade spirit stones each. Yu Qianqiu understood that the material he was talking about was not ordinary. Normally, the talisman paper that could reach the standard of the 4th level was usually made from human skin and other materials that were good at guiding spirituality. However, the old man's price was not low. It was even higher than the talismans that Qin Feng sold here. It seemed that he wanted to make him back off. He could not help but frown. I'll reduce the price of all white talismans by half. I'll take all of them. Reduce by half? All of them? The old man muttered as he twirled his beard. He looked at the thousands of white talismans on the stall and considered whether it was worth it to make a small profit but quick turnover. Yu Qianqiu also knew that his price was a little too high. However, when he talked to Qin Feng last night, Qin Feng told him that he needed a lot of white talismans to train his subordinates. He wanted him to think of a solution as soon as possible. Yu Qianqiu attached great importance to this matter. If he could train a group of talisman-making experts to provide logistical support for the army, it was worth it to spend more money. Fortunately, he was in the 100 Flowers Valley. It was not difficult to solve this problem. Seeing that he was still hesitating, Yu Qianqiu frowned. This is the price. You don't have to think about it anymore. From today onwards, I'll take all of your white talismans. This is the deposit for tomorrow. He threw a high-grade spirit stone on the stall. Chapter 168. The amber gold color made the old man's eyes light up. A piece of upper-grade spirit stone was enough for him to trade for a few days. He grabbed it to verify its authenticity and immediately nodded. We'll do as you say. I'll count it for you. He immediately counted the white talismans in the stall. There were more than 1,000 white talismans, but there were only a dozen of level 4 talismans. The rest were not worth much to Yu Qianqiu. In the end, it cost a total of 7 upper-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu threw 8 to him and stuffed all the white talismans into his storage bag. Then he ordered, keep the change. You've already taken the deposit. Remember to bring more tomorrow. The same price. I'll take as much as you have. The old man repeatedly said yes. Suddenly he was startled as if he remembered something. He hesitantly took out a piece of upper-grade spirit stone and said, to tell you the truth, I've already given you what I have. It will take a few days to gather more materials. I'll have to go out of the 100 Flowers Valley to find some materials. I won't be able to deliver it to you tomorrow. You should take back the deposit first. Yu Qianqiu frowned and asked, how long will it take for you to come back? The old man thought for a while and said, 2 to 3 days at least, 5 to 6 days at most. It depends on the time needed to gather materials. In that case, you should keep the deposit. I'll be staying in the 100 Flowers Valley for a long time. Prepare more goods. I'll come to get them when I have time. I'm sure you won't abscond with the deposit, right? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. Yo, look at what you're saying. I'm Donghua Su, and I've set up a stall in the 100 Flowers Valley for a few decades to make a living. My entire family has settled down in the 100 Flowers Valley, so I can't ruin the livelihood of my entire family just for a piece of high-grade spirit stone from you. Besides, I'm not blind. I can tell that you're a disciple of Supporting Immortals Island from your attire. I can provoke anyone but Supporting Immortals Island. The old man Donghua smiled apologetically. It's good that you understand. It's a deal then, Yu Qianqiu said indifferently and left. Considering that the supply of old man Donghua's family might not be able to keep up with the demand, he wandered around the market and found several stalls that made talismans. After bargaining, he also bought a lot of talismans. After wandering around for a while, he looked at the time. It was almost time for the appointment he had with Bai Zitsong and the other 3 yesterday. When he walked to the Bai clan's shop, Bai Zitsong and the other 3 were already looking at him with smiles on their faces. The 5 of them joked around and discussed where they should go for a drink. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, I seem to recall Yan Zhuixing saying that all my expenses in the 100 Flowers residence will be on him, right? Tan Fei was stunned. Brother, you can't really be thinking of going to 100 Flowers house again, right? Can't I? Why wouldn't I eat if it's free? Yu Qianqiu asked back. The 4 of them immediately looked at each other. After all, they were from a big clan. They really couldn't do such a shameless thing. Bai Zitsong smiled and said, he's being polite, but it's not good for us to take it seriously, right? Let's go somewhere else. It's really a problem of being spoiled by big clans. Their skin is quite thin. Forget it, I'll take the lead. You guys can just treat it as my treat. Stop daydreaming, let's go. Let's go. Yu Qianqiu said as he pushed the 4 of them. Unable to dissuade him, the 4 of them helplessly followed him to 100 Flowers house. However, once they reached the door, They took the initiative to keep a distance from him and pretended to be calm as they looked around. Yu Qianqiu felt a little strange when he stepped into the door. Why was there no one downstairs today? When shopkeeper Chen saw him, he quickly walked over and said respectfully, "Mr. Yu, are you here to look for my young master?" "That's not it. Today I'll treat the four of you to a drink or two." As he said that, he pointed at Bai Zitsong and the other three. When the four of them heard what he said, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They felt a little embarrassed and turned their heads to the side as if they were attracted by some scenery. Shopkeeper Chen was stunned at first, then his face twitched slightly. He smiled apologetically and said, "If that's the case, the five of you should go to the private room upstairs. There's no need to go through so much trouble." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "The five of us will just find a table downstairs to eat something." No matter how thick-skinned he was, he couldn't always come to eat the best banquet of others. This. Shopkeeper Chen hesitated for a while and explained, "Mr. Yu, I'm really sorry today. The restaurant downstairs is not receiving any guests. The few of you, please go to the private room upstairs." Cleared? Did someone book the entire restaurant? Yu Qianqiu was shocked. No wonder there were no guests downstairs. At this moment there was a commotion outside. Yu Qianqiu poked his head out to take a look and was shocked. Yan Zhuixing and Yan Zixia were leading a large group of people, and the person in the middle was none other than the 10,000 demons Qiu Wuyuan. Many people felt that he looked familiar. What's going on? While they were shocked, shopkeeper Chen explained, "The Diabolism has formed an alliance of Diabolism. They are also staying in the 100 Flowers Valley. The 100 Flowers Palace is going to welcome them at the 100 Flowers House, so we have to clear the restaurant. Mr. Yu, please give me some face and invite me to the private room upstairs. The righteous created a cultivation alliance, and the Diabolism created a alliance of Diabolism. Damn. They are opposing each other. There's going to be a good show. I was wondering what these old guys were busy with today." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed, "Shopkeeper Chen, I didn't know you were busy today. It's our fault. I'll come again another day." "Not at all, not at all." Shopkeeper Chen was still trying to be polite. Yu Qianqiu turned around and left. He didn't want to stay and greet Qiu Wuyuan and the others. The righteous and the Diabolism had already started fighting. As a small disciple, it was better for him not to get involved. He called Bai Zitsong and the others to change places. The four of them didn't want to come, so they didn't have any objections. It's little brother Yu Qianqiu in front. After walking a few steps, Qiu Wuyuan, whose eyes were sharper, had already raised his voice and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu? Where? Where?" Qiu Wuyuan's shout immediately caused the disciples of the Myriad Demons Temple, the Blood Devil Temple and the Corpse God sect to boil up. Many disciples of the three sects had heard of Yu Qianqiu's name in the Demon Ghost region. Unfortunately, most of them had never seen him. Now that they heard of Yu Qianqiu, they naturally wanted to see him. "Old thing, will you die if you don't shout?" Yu Qianqiu squeezed out a smile on his face, turned around, and cupped his hands towards Qiu Wuyuan, who was walking over quickly. "Senior Qiu, I haven't seen you for many years, but you are still as elegant as ever, truly worthy of congratulations." Bai Zitsong and the others didn't know what was going on. They stopped to watch. Wasn't this Yu Qianqiu a disciple of Fuxian Island? Why was he so familiar with the Diabolism? Moreover, it seemed like they had a close relationship. Ah. Qiu Wuyuan looked back at his fellow Diabolism members and laughed heartily. "I knew I wouldn't be wrong. It's indeed brother Yu Qianqiu." The people of the three major Diabolism sects also gathered around as if they had seen a rare animal. Many of them cupped their hands and said, "I've heard a lot about you." Yu Qianqiu also cupped his hands towards them. Although Yan Zixia tried her best to pretend that she didn't know Yu Qianqiu, she couldn't help but be surprised. Since when did he have a relationship with the Diabolism people? The Diabolism people didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards him. Especially Qiu Wuyuan, who treated him like an old friend. This was a little unbelievable in the cultivation world. Yan Zhuixing's eyes flickered between Yu Qianqiu and the Diabolism people. He was actually shocked. He thought to himself, what is the background of this Yu Qianqiu? Chapter 169. Haha, being able to see little brother again is truly a joyous thing. Come, let us drink a cup with little brother. Qiu Wuyuan extended his hand and pulled Yu Qianqiu's arm towards the 100 Flowers house. Yu Qianqiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. They were in public. Could you please be more mindful of your image? Diabolism and righteous sects are so close. How am I going to explain this? He struggled a little and shook his head with a bitter smile. Senior Qiu, please reconsider. Chiu Wuyun turned around and said in a daze, "Could it be that little brother is looking down on this old man and not giving me face?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, "Senior, please consider for me. I am a disciple of Fuxian Island." Chiu Wuyuan glanced around and instantly understood Yu Qianqiu's concerns. He immediately let go of Yu Qianqiu's arm and said with an embarrassed smile, "I was a bit too excited to see little brother. I didn't put myself in your shoes. Since that's the case, little brother, please do as you please." "Senior, you think highly of me," Yu Qianqiu said politely and cupped his hands. "I still have something to do, so I can't stay for long. If there's a chance in the future, I will invite all of you to have a drink with me. Goodbye." After that, he pulled Bai Zitsong and the other three out of the crowd. The three major demonic sects cupped their hands at him. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing's mood was indescribable. A disciple from a righteous sect could make the three major demonic sects give him face. It was unbelievable. What had happened behind the scenes? Of course, he did not know that Yu Qianqiu had saved the lives of the disciples from the three major demonic sections. The righteous sects might think that Yu Qianqiu should have saved the disciples of the righteous sects, but to the demonic sects, it was a huge debt of gratitude. The demonic sects had always been particular about taking revenge, unlike the righteous sects who had many concerns. It was the demonic sects' way of doing things. The five entered a remote restaurant and sat down. Bai Zitsong applauded softly and smiled. "Brother Yu is really admirable. Even the demonic sects have to look at you differently. If Brother Yu said you were just an ordinary disciple of Fuxian Island, I wouldn't believe it even if you beat me to death." Seeing that the four of them wanted to ask, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. Stop. I am indeed an ordinary disciple of the supporting Immortal Island. It's just that something's happened in the past. My sect also knows about it, but it's not convenient for me to tell you now. Don't ask. Even if you ask, I won't tell you. When the time is right, I will not hide it anymore." He said it so straightforwardly, so the four of them didn't ask any more questions. They called for food and wine to be served. They chatted and laughed for a while. After eating and drinking, Yu Qianqiu told the four that the elders of the sect allowed him to bring his friends to visit the Cultivation Alliance. He didn't know if the four of them would be interested. In fact, ordinary people wouldn't pay attention to the four of them because of their identities. They got along with Yu Qianqiu purely because of the golden signboard of Fuxian Island. After spending some time with him, the four of them greatly appreciated Yu Qianqiu's straightforward character and treated him as a friend. Now that they heard that they could visit the Cultivation Alliance, they readily agreed. It was not a place that ordinary people could enter casually. Yu Qianqiu threw out some spiritual stones to pay the bill. The five drunkards walked toward the Cultivation Alliance, chatting and laughing. When they came to the gate, they suddenly saw a few people coming out. It was Lu Wanwan who led them out. The two of them looked at each other. Lu Wanwan snorted coldly and ignored him. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him casually and ignored him. Suddenly, his eyes swept over a beautiful figure among them, and his body suddenly trembled. The few of them brushed past them. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and slowly turned around. If he didn't see it wrong, the beautiful woman was none other than Ong Kwangsung's Chu Ping. Why was she here? She clearly saw him, but why didn't she recognize him? Could it be that his appearance had changed so much? Yu Qianqiu touched his face subconsciously. Bai Zitsong and the other three also found something wrong with him. Tan Fei suddenly said in a low voice, "Brother Yu, if I remember correctly, the beautiful woman among them seemed to be the person you wanted to see. She should be Lu Jingguang's Taoist partner." Yu Qianqiu's entire body shook when he heard this, and then he turned around and suddenly grabbed Tan Fei's collar as he shouted explosively. "What did you say? Didn't you say that his Taoist partner's surname is Su?" The few of them were shocked and quickly separated the two. Tan Fei shouted angrily, "Brother Yu, what do you mean by this? Do you really think that the four major families are afraid of Fuxian Island?" Yu Qianqiu clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. He suppressed the anger in his chest and slowly said in a deep voice, "Brother Tan, please don't take offense. I was the one who didn't control myself. Please follow me, I have something to say." After that, he left. The other four people exchanged glances and nodded, then followed him. The two disciples of the Cultivation Alliance also knew Yu Qianqiu. They didn't know what happened to him. The few of them arrived at a secluded mountain field, and Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around and said in a low voice, "Brother Tan, that woman from before is a woman I haven't seen for many years. Her name is Chu Ping." They were all stunned. Tan Fei's mouth was wide open. If his woman was said to be someone else's Taoist partner, he would definitely kill that person. He couldn't help but say, How is this possible? She should be Ong Kwangsung's disciple. How did she become your woman? Bai Zitsong also knew that the problem was getting out of hand. He frowned and said, Tan Fei, what's wrong with you? Didn't you say that Lu Jingguang's Taoist partner's surname is Su? How did she become the Chu Ping that brother you mentioned? Did you get the wrong person? Damn it. It's not that I heard it wrong. It's just that it's been too long and I can't remember it correctly. Tan Fei was annoyed. Yu Qianqiu said in a low voice, Tan Fei, are you sure that the person you saw in Ong Kwangsung was her and not someone else? Brother Yu, I won't hide it from you. This woman's appearance is really good. You all saw it just now. I saw her in Ong Kwangsung and I remembered her deeply. There's no mistaking her. She is indeed the Taoist partner that I saw in Ong Kwangsung with Lu Jingguang. Unless Lu Jingguang changed again, there's no mistaking her. Damn it. What nonsense did I say? Brother Yu, I'm really sorry. Tan Fei didn't even know what expression he had when he said this. Everyone was silent. They all knew that Lu Jingguang was a eunuch. Finding a woman to be his Taoist partner was probably to cover up his flaws. Why would he change women so casually unless he had a screw loose? Junior Marshal Brother Yu, Junior Marshal Brother Yu. Xiong Hui suddenly appeared not far away and shouted. He jogged over and cupped his fists, smiling, Yo. Brother Bai, Brother Jing, Brother Wu, Brother Tan, the four of you are here too. The four of them had something on their minds. They forced a smile and nodded as a greeting. Xiong Hui did not mind. He walked over to Yu Qianqiu's side and said with a smile, Junior brother, you really made me look for you for a long time. I didn't expect you to come here. Are you here to see the scenery? What a good mood. He looked around as he spoke. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, Senior Marshal brother, is there anything you need from me? Xiong Hui nodded and smiled, Junior Marshal brother, let me tell you something funny. Today people from Ong Kwangsung came to Ong Kwangsung to bring Lu Jingguang back to Hundred Flowers Palace. Didn't you say you wanted to see Lu Jingguang's beautiful Taoist partner? You might not know, but his Taoist partner is here too. I saw her just now. She's really beautiful. Sigh. It's such a pity that a eunuch like Lu Jingguang found such a beautiful Taoist partner. Junior Marshal brother, they're going back in the afternoon. Why don't you go and see them now? You don't have to go to Ong Kwangsung in the future. Yu Qianqiu didn't get angry after listening to him. Instead he laughed sinisterly, hee hee. Very good, very good. Bai Zitsong and the other three knew that he was laughing out of anger. In order to escape, Ong Kwangsung's elder Lu Wanwan used his disciples as a shield. I was one of them. He grabbed me by the neck and threw me out. Yu Qianqiu paused and turned back to look at them. Fortunately, I was lucky and didn't die. At that time, I thought that since my life was so worthless in Ong Kwangsung, I might as well leave. So I took this opportunity to escape. Later on, I met Chu Ping again in the Hundred Flowers house in the Hundred Flowers Valley. The two of us made a promise to each other that we wouldn't part until we met again in a few years. It was also at this time that I personally castrated Lu Jingguang. The four were stunned. Tan Fei was stunned. You castrated Lu Jingguang? Yu Qianqiu nodded. That's right. Since I see you four as my brothers, there's no need to hide it from you. I can swear to God that I haven't mentioned this to anyone except the four of you. His story was half true and half false, and he even modified it a little. In the end, the four of them became somewhat excited. For Yu Qianqiu to be able to reveal such a secretive matter and even swear an oath, it was clearly true. Bai Zitsong exhaled and said, So that's how it is. What happened after that? After that, maybe my luck changed. It was also the same day that I was introduced to supporting Xian Island. I was lucky enough to be accepted as the only disciple of supporting Xian Island's Alchemy Pavilion's principal elder. Thus, I focused on cultivation. When I stepped into the Hundred Flowers Valley again, I met you four by chance. You all know what happened after that. Principal elder of supporting Xian Island's Alchemy Pavilion? Could it be the pill addict Senior Guan in the cultivation world? Wu Liqing asked. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands in the direction of supporting Xian Island. That's my master. Jing Zwe nodded. That's not bad. I was just wondering how Brother Yu was able to reach the core formation stage in less than 10 years. So it was because of Senior Guan's medicinal pills. The four clans naturally knew the Guan clan's status in supporting Xian Island. No wonder Yu Qianqiu dared to hit someone in public. He was also so rich. It turned out that he was a direct descendant of the Guan clan. The four of them secretly thought that it wasn't a waste to make this friend. Maybe he could help them smoothly inherit the position of the clan leader. Bai Zitsong sighed. No wonder Brother Yu was so excited when he saw Chu Ping. Seems like she let you down. But why would she become Dao companions with a eunuch? I'm afraid there's something she had to do. I think Brother Yu shouldn't be too anxious. Let's investigate this matter first. There's something we won't hide from Brother Yu. The four of us are the first successors of the four clans. Why don't we use the four clans' power to help you investigate this matter? The other three nodded in agreement. This is returning a favor. I've already guessed that the four of you are important in the four clans. Otherwise, how can a normal descendant live such a leisurely life in the 100 Flowers Valley? I also can't play with you all day long. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. No need. I want to ask this personally. But there's something I need to trouble the four of you with. The four of them looked at each other. Bai Zitsong nodded. Brother Yu, you don't have to be so courteous. From today onwards we're brothers. If there's anything we can help with, just let us know. Yu Qianqiu didn't stand on ceremony. He took out a small porcelain bottle from his middle finger and dripped a drop of blood into it. Then he pretended to cast a spell. After closing the bottle, he passed it to Bai Zitsong. Isn't Ong Quang-tsung bringing Lu Jingguang back? I believe it's not just one or two people. I need to go back and deploy some forces to prevent any accidents. I'll have to trouble the four of you to help me keep an eye on him. Once we're out of the 100 Flowers Valley, Brother Bai can open this bottle. I'll know where you guys are. Bai Zitsong took the bottle and nodded happily. We'll go watch the city gate now. Don't worry. After saying that, the four of them left together. Yu Qianqiu returned to the Cultivation Alliance with a gloomy face. He went to his room and disappeared after closing the door. In Utopia's military camp, 3 companies of people in black clothes and masks were ready to go. On the stone platform, Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared. Guan Yu shouted, "Salute!" Swoosh. The hundreds of people below the platform clenched their right fists and placed them on their left chests. They lowered their heads slightly. Their movements were very orderly. Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept across the small silver medallion on everyone's chests. There was a serial number on it, and when it was forged, he had added a little of his own blood into it, allowing him to easily grasp everyone's location. After a while, Yu Qianqiu nodded. Guan Yu shouted again, "End of ceremony." With a swoosh, everyone returned to their original state. Not a single one of them spoke. They just stood there silently waiting for their orders. Yu Qianqiu also didn't say a word. He quietly stood on the stone platform with his eyes closed. Guan Yu looked at him in surprise. His lips moved. He wanted to ask what they were doing, but his gaze swept past his subordinates who didn't say a word. He held himself back. Thus, everyone stood there without saying a word. The scene was extremely strange. Chapter 171. At the exit of the 100 Flowers Valley, Bai Zitsong and the other 3 found a table by the window in a tea house and sat down. The 4 of them chatted and drank tea while waiting. After more than 4 hours, Tan Fei suddenly put down the teacup in his hand and gestured to the window with his lips. The 4 of them casually turned their heads to look. A group of people wearing Ong Quang-tsung clothes passed by the window and walked towards the city gate. At the front were 6 old men walking side by side, followed by a man and a woman. The man's face was gloomy, and there were scars on his face from being beaten. The woman was extraordinarily beautiful, and there was no expression on her face. Her figure was even more curvaceous. The man and woman were Lu Jingguang and Chu Ping. The 10 people behind them were old and young. Jing's was stuck out his tongue and laughed softly. This Ong Quang-tsung seems to be afraid of Yu Qianqiu. He actually needs so many people to escort him back. Bai Zitsong shook his head. It's not that Yu Qianqiu scared them. Ong Quang-tsung knows that Lu Jingguang fought with the disciples of Fuxian Island and is afraid that they will take revenge. That's why he sent so many people to escort him back. Otherwise, a core formation cultivator like Yu Qianqiu wouldn't make them do this. Jingzhou laughed. The dignified Fuxian Island shouldn't be so narrow-minded, right? They are really gauging the heart of a gentleman with their own mean measure. TSK. Other than that Lu Jingguang and Chu Ping I can't see through the cultivation of the others. Obviously, they are at least in the middle stage of core formation. The 6 elders in front are probably in the nascent soul stage. Tan Fei said. Wu Liqing frowned. What is Yu Qianqiu trying to do? With such a lineup, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to negotiate. Jing's smiled and said, I didn't expect the four of us to do something like stalking someone. Yu Qianqiu has quite a reputation. That goes without saying. He didn't even give face to the number one demonic sect, 10,000 demons Jiu Wuyuan. Don't you think that's a big deal? Bai Zitsong said slowly. Don't say any more. They are about to leave the city. Let's follow them. Tan Fei suddenly said. They glanced at each other and immediately got up to pay the bill and left the tea house. When they left the 100 Flowers Valley, they saw that An Kuang-tsung and the others had already flown far away on a flying instrument. Bai Zitsong opened the lid of the porcelain bottle in his hand and nodded at the three of them. The four of them rode on their swords and chased after them at a moderate distance. In Utopia, Yu Qianqiu immediately felt the location of his blood essence moving quickly. He raised his eyebrows and opened his eyes abruptly. He said, Yunchang, get ready. I'll go out and take a look. Wu Baru cupped his hands towards the direction where the voice came from. Bai Zitsong and the other three felt something was wrong. They looked at Yu Qianqiu at the same time. They saw the latter looking at An Kuang-tsung and the others with a sneer. They couldn't help but look at the forest behind them. The sound of a horse's hooves came from the forest on the hillside. A silhouette riding on a horse was faintly seen walking down from the trees. A burly middle-aged man wearing a green robe and a green hat could be seen on his head. He had 3 strands of long beard on his face. His face was flushed and a pair of phoenix eyes looked imposing. He was riding his horse slowly towards the crowd. The mount he was sitting on was even more eye-catching. It had bright red fur, and its eyes shone with a demonic light. Especially its body, it was more than twice the size of a tall horse. Its chest and limbs were full of bulging muscles, making it look like a divine and extraordinary steed. Everyone had never seen such a big horse. Coupled with the person sitting on the horse, it was really shocking. What an imposing manner. This person was none other than Guan Yunchang. He rode his horse down and the man in black took the initiative to make way for him to enter. From then on, those who didn't know his background finally knew that the person who came was also on Yu Qianqiu's side. Guan Yu sat upright on the horse and glanced at An Kuang-tsung and the others coldly. He said in a deep voice, Where are the people from Fuxian Island? Who was the one who asked me to uphold justice? Wu Baoru was completely speechless. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Guan Yu who was sitting high up beside him. He was very unhappy. He thought to himself, what did my sister teach this stupid horse to cultivate? Doesn't she know that this stupid horse can't get along with me? Damn it. He's all grown but he stole my limelight. Wu Baoru looked at Guan Yu from head to toe. He suddenly realized that although this person looked extraordinary, his cultivation base was the lowest among them. He couldn't help but sneer. I was wondering who came. So it's a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Guan Yu's red phoenix eyes widened slightly. He said proudly, You have a sharp tongue. You'll be crying later. As he spoke, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, Boss, what are you going to do? Yu Qianqiu stared at Chu Ping'er who was in An Kuang-tsung's group and said indifferently, You still haven't said anything. Don't you know why I'm here? Don't you want to give me an explanation? An Kuang-tsung and the others followed his gaze and realized that it was actually Chu Ping'er. They couldn't help but look at each other. What did this have to do with her? Hearing that, Chu Ping'er's body trembled. Her face turned pale in an instant. She raised her head miserably and shook her head with a bitter smile. You know everything now. Isn't that enough? What else do you want me to explain? Yu Qianqiu clenched his fists. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he opened his eyes and exhaled. The promise from back then. I want to know why. I want an explanation. Bai Zitsong and the others exchanged glances. Yu Qianqiu was a good brother. Everything he said was true. An Kuang-tsung and the others' eyes flickered. They could vaguely guess what was going on. Bitch. You bitch. How dare you have an affair behind my back? Lu Jingguang roared again. Although his body was restrained by his disciples, he could still move his legs. He immediately kicked Chu Ping'er's abdomen. Chu Ping'er grunted in pain. She was kicked to the ground. A few strands of her beautiful hair were messed up. She bit her lips and covered her abdomen with one hand. Then she slowly climbed up. Yu Qianqiu felt a heart-wrenching pain in his chest. He let out a voice that sounded like it came out from the depths of hell. He said coldly, Wu Baoru, you better control that little bastard. If he dares to speak rudely or touch me again, I'll send all of you to meet the ancestors of An Kwang-tsung. Chapter 172. Wu Baoru's expression changed unpredictably when he was reprimanded in front of everyone. It alternated between white and red. He was obviously angry. However, the situation was stronger than the person. With a single order from the other party, he could really annihilate all of them. After hesitating for a while, he turned around and walked towards the restless Lu Jingguang. It seemed that he really wanted to stop him. Martial Ancestor Wu, ask them to let go of me. Ask them to let go of me. I want to kill this adulterous couple. I want to kill this adulterous couple. Lu Jingguang roared incessantly. Chu Ping-er stood not far away. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her silver teeth were still stubbornly biting down on her red lips. Traces of blood had already seeped out. Yu Qianqiu's expression also became increasingly gloomy. He narrowed his eyes at Lu Jingguang, and his chilling intent was self-evident. Jingguang, shut up. Wu Baoru shouted. His figure suddenly flashed and he quickly rushed to Chu Ping-er's side. His left hand grabbed her neck, and the long sword in his right hand was also placed on the neck of his left hand. It looked like he was going to slice Chu Ping-er's head off her neck. Chu Ping-er immediately felt that it was difficult to breathe. Her pretty face was slightly raised from being pinched. Finally, 2 sad tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes and dripped down her cheeks. Perhaps it was because she knew that she was about to die. Although her head was raised, she couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu with a pair of mournful eyes that were filled with deep regret. Anyone who saw that miserable pretty face would feel heartache. However, Yu Qianqiu was unbelievably calm, as if Chu Ping-er's life and death had nothing to do with him. He slowly raised his hand, rubbed his nose and stared at Wu Baoru. He asked emotionlessly, Wu Baoru, what do you mean by this? Are you trying to use her to threaten me? Wu Baoru used both his hands to control Chu Ping-er's life. He turned around and placed her in front of him. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and laughed evilly. Little brat, this old man has eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. Don't play this trick in front of this old man. Since you're here for this girl, don't act like you don't care. Hurry up and tell them to get out of the way. Letting us go is the right way. Maybe if I'm happy, I'll let this girl go. When Lu Jingguang heard this, he was unhappy and immediately shouted, Grandmaster Wu, you can't let this bitch go. Kill this slut for me. Shut up. Wu Baoru turned around and shouted fiercely. There was a look of exasperation on his face. Ever since this child's body became ill, it became harder and harder for him to control his temper. Even at a time like this, he was still acting on his emotions. After he finished scolding, he turned around and smiled evilly at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, hurry up and tell them to get out of the way. My patience is limited. Yu Qianqiu had never been threatened like this before. He looked at Chu Ping-er, who was having difficulty breathing, and smiled indifferently. Old fart, it's not your turn to bargain with me. Seeing that you and my master are from the same sect, I'll give you 2 choices based on our old friendship. 1, you kill her immediately, then I'll kill all of you. 2, you let her go and I'll let all of you go. Wu Baoru looked at Chu Ping-er. Naturally, he wouldn't dare to kill her. She was everyone's life-saving item now. After pondering for a moment, he shouted, I choose the second option, but your words have no proof. How can we believe you? Yu Qianqiu saw that Chu Ping-er's face was already turning green. The muscles on his face twitched. He raised a palm and said, I swear if you let Chu Ping-er go safely, I'll let all of you go. Otherwise, I'll be punished by the heavens. Wu Baoru, stop talking nonsense with me. I'll count to 3. If you're late, you'll all die. He turned around and said to Guan Yu, I'll count to 3. If they still don't let her go, I won't spare a single one and kill them all. He immediately started counting, not giving the other party any time to prepare. I agree. Wu Baoru hurriedly shouted. He was really afraid that the other party would count to 3. He had no other choice. Yu Qianqiu didn't give them any time to think. Moreover, the other party had already made an oath. Cultivators' oaths would come true if they broke it. What was there to worry about? Wu Baoru let go of his hand and pushed Chu Ping-er out of the crowd of An Kwang-tsung. The latter fell to the ground. At this moment, Bai Zitsong and Tan Fei nodded. The 2 of them dashed over and carried her back to Yu Qianqiu's side. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 2 of them with relief. Yu Qianqiu, it's time to fulfill your oath. Wu Baoru shouted. Of course. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at the black-clothed man diagonally across him and said, Make way and let them leave. The black-clothed man obeyed the order and quickly made way. An Kuang-tsung and the rest were overjoyed. They held their swords and retreated cautiously towards the gap. Guan Yu sat on the red rabbit, watching An Kuang-tsung and the rest retreat. He was so angry that his face turned even redder. How could he not be angry when the hero army that he had trained so hard ended up like this in their first battle? Guan Yu said unwillingly, "Boss, are we just going to let them go like this?" Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and said leisurely, "I've already made an oath. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to break my oath and be punished by the heavens?" After saying that, he turned around and suddenly said, "I've made an oath. As for whether you guys have made an oath or not, I don't know. Anyway, this is not something I can control." Hearing this, the faces of An Kuang-tsung's disciples who had not completely retreated changed. Wu Baru was so angry that he scolded, "You Qianqiu, you scum, you will die a horrible death. Let's go." An Kuang-tsung and the rest immediately flew away on their swords with all their might. Guan Yu's eyes lit up. He chuckled and waved his hand saying, "Don't leave a single one alive. Kill them all." The company commander received the order and pointed with his finger, shouting, "Battle formation, kill them all." The military order was as firm as a mountain. Dozens of nascent Seoul late-stage men in black took the lead and quickly chased after them. The rest of the men in black followed in an orderly manner. After the group of black shadows whizzed away, there were only a few people left. Guan Yu had always felt that Chu Ping looked familiar. At this moment, he remembered that it was the woman he met in 100 Flowers House. He immediately smiled and said, "Red Rabbit, let's follow and see." The Red Rabbit was quite intelligent and could understand Guan Yu's words. It didn't need to control it much either. With a long hiss, its majestic body suddenly stood up, and its two front hooves scratched the air. Then, it suddenly put them down and took advantage of the momentum to rush in the direction of the black-clothed man. Its four black and shiny hooves flashed, setting off a gust of wind around everyone. By the time they reacted, the Red Rabbit's huge body had already carried Guan Yu dozens of meters away. It was really fast. Looking again, a horse carrying a person was running in the mountains as if it was running on flat ground. Regardless of the steep mountain or the dangerous road, it only cared about running in a straight line. It ran faster and faster. Gradually, it turned into a black dot and disappeared. It seemed that nothing could stop it. Bai Zitsong and the other three looked at each other in shock. They thought to themselves, "What kind of horse is this? It actually had such a fast running speed." Even a cultivator who had just reached the foundation establishment stage couldn't fly as fast as it ran on the ground. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it and showed a look of disdain. In fact, he was also very envious of Guan Yu for having such a BMW. He had long wanted to take it for himself. He believed that it would be very cool to ride this guy for a few laps. However, this little beast was very vengeful. It always remembered that he had kicked it in the past. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't even let him get close to it, let alone ride it. He could only watch Guan Yu ride such a handsome guy around in Utopia. He could only be envious. Sigh. What a sin. Looking at Chu Pinger at the side, the crystal-clear tears on her pretty face kept sliding down her cheeks. However, she bit her lips hard to not cry out. Her lips were already bright red, obviously biting very hard. The big footprint left by Lu Jingguang on the abdomen of her pure white clothes was still very obvious. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth a few times wanting to say something, but he didn't. He really didn't know what to say at the moment. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. He exhaled and said, "The four of you help me look after it. I'll go take a look." When the four of them nodded, the long sword was unsheathed and bounced up, drawing an arc in the air, carrying him quickly. Although he could disappear for a short while, the man on the sword and the woman on the ground were both inexplicably sad and in pain. They could only fly quickly in the air, letting the strong wind continue to blow and tear their faces. Chapter 173. It had to be said that An Kuang-tsung's battle strength was very strong. After years of fighting against the demonic sects, especially when the Blood Demon Palace launched a large-scale attack, those who survived were all people who climbed out of a pile of corpses. Not to mention cultivation just based on battle experience, it was not something an ordinary person could compare with. However, Guan Yu's subordinates were also not ordinary. They were the outstanding disciples of the three major sects, and they were able to survive the trials in the Demon Ghost region. Every one of them was not simple. However, when comparing the two sides, An Kuang-tsung was definitely at a disadvantage. First of all, Guan Yu's side had more people, and their cultivation was generally higher than the other side. In addition, these years of intensive training, their ability to fight together was very strong. Guan Yu rode the red rabbit on top of a mountain and looked down. Yu Qianqiu landed next to him on his sword. The two of them looked at each other and looked down at the same time. An Kuang-tsung didn't escape for long before he was stopped by the black-clothed people. The black-clothed people who came from behind immediately surrounded them. An Kuang-tsung and the others probably knew that they had no chance of survival. Wu Baoru let everyone huddle together, and 6 nascent soul stage elders led the way. They desperately rushed out, hoping that one of them could escape. But was it possible? The company commander coldly snorted, waved his hand and shouted, "Strangle them!" More than 100 black-clothed people each took out an arrow talisman and threw it out. Rays of yellow light shot out, and An Kuang-tsung and the others were instantly forced into a panic. Following that, more than 100 flying swords flew over, and screams could be heard. When the black-clothed people retrieved their flying swords, the ground was covered in blood, and not a single complete corpse could be found. The battle ended in just a few moves. Guan Yu looked down and shook his head. "Boss, my squad can take care of these people. Is there a need to call out a company?" "It's always good to be careful. You must know that our army's follow-up forces have not caught up yet, and we still haven't replenished our manpower. If we lose one person, our formation will be incomplete and that will be a loss. It's safer to fight with numbers." Yu Qianqiu said in a low voice, "Prepare to go back." Guan Yu nodded and galloped down on his horse. He circled around the area a few times and confirmed that An Kuang-tsung's people were all dead. After that, the entire group became one again. Yu Qianqiu flew down and covered it with his divine senses. He instantly returned to Utopia. Glancing at the severed limbs on the ground, Lu Jingguang and Wu Baoru could be considered to have completely disappeared. However, they had died a little too quickly, which was a little different from his original plan. The sword shot out and flew away from this place. Returning to Bai Zitsong and the rest, Yu Qianqiu stared at Chu Ping'er and said in a low voice, "They're all dead, including that eunuch husband of yours. Shouldn't you give me an explanation now?" "Brother, you guys talk. We'll go back first." Bai Zitsong glanced at the two of them and said. It seemed like it was a little inconvenient for the 4 of them to stay here while they were talking about such a topic. Yu Qianqiu nodded and continued to stare at Chu Ping'er, Bai Zitsong, and the other 2 as they left on their swords. "Why aren't you talking? Do you still remember the promise you made to me back then? Do you know that I'm here to pick you up from An Kuang-tsung? I've never forgotten my promise to you." Yu Qianqiu's tone was calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Chu Ping'er smiled sadly and said, "Didn't you see everything? What else do you want me to say? Anyway, I'm sorry." As she said that, she took out an exquisite storage pouch from her clothes and rubbed it in her hand. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes. He recognized that it was the storage pouch that he gave her back then. Chu Ping'er held it out with her slender hands and said, "I didn't use any of the spiritual stones inside. I'm returning it to you." Yu Qianqiu's expression was dead, and there was no change in his expression. He said calmly, "I have a lot of spiritual stones. It's more than enough to buy you back from An Kuang-tsung. I'm not a gentleman and I'm very selfish. If you really want to return something to me, then return the feelings that I gave to you. Can you return it to me?" Chu Ping'er squeezed the storage pouch in her hand, and a stream of tears began to flow down her face. She looked at Yu Qianqiu and shook her head as she cried, "What do you want from me? I've already said it. I want you to give me an explanation. Is this making things difficult for you?" Yu Qianqiu said softly. "Yu Qianqiu, please let me go. Do you think there's a need for an explanation?" Chu Ping'er shook her head. "Is there a need? Fine, I'll tell you a story." Yu Qianqiu looked at her and said slowly, "My home is in Wuxia Swallow City. I'm sure you've been there before. Once, when I was playing in the wilderness, I saw a woman washing her hair next to a stream. I only took a glance and was deeply in love with her. I couldn't help but stare blankly. But when the woman saw me, she glared at me and flew away on her sword. From that day on, I missed that woman all the time. I finally knew that the legendary celestial beings were real. So, I searched everywhere for the path of cultivation, not for anything else, but to see her again. Hard work pays off. Later I joined An Kuang-tsung. Coincidentally, the woman of my dreams was also An Kuang-tsung's disciple. The way the two of them met was really funny. I accidentally saw the female disciple bathing. I think you should know who I'm talking about now, right? Swallow City. Swallow City. Chu Ping'er murmured as if she was thinking about something. After a long time, she suddenly raised her head and said, "That young man was you?" Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Yes, you remember now. From the first day I joined the cultivation world until now, it can be said that everything I did was for you. Can't I get an explanation from you after I've sacrificed so much? Chu Ping, are you going to treat me so cruelly? You don't even give me a reason to give up. Aren't you too heartless?" Chu Ping was a little speechless. She really didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so devoted to her. "What about me? Tell me why you were with Lu Jingguang. Ever since I saw you in 100 Flowers Valley today and found out about your situation, I have always believed that you had no other choice. I have always believed that." Yu Qianqiu looked very affectionate, and he gave off the feeling of Granny Wolf patiently guiding him. After some torment, Chu Pinger's tightly clenched teeth were finally pried open by him. It turned out that when Lu Jingguang had an accident in the 100 Flowers Valley, the head of Ong Kwangtsung, Lu Changqing, was furious and almost killed Chu Pinger. Chu Pinger's master, Li Rulan, argued strongly and risked defending the head to save Chu Pinger. Originally, Chu Pinger had thought that the matter was over just like that. However, after Lu Jingguang recovered from his injuries, he continued to pester Chu Pinger. Since Yu Qianqiu was already in her heart, it was only natural that she would ignore him. In fact, if Yu Qianqiu hadn't revealed Lu Jingguang's matter, until now, most people in Ong Kwangtsung didn't know what kind of injury Lu Jingguang had suffered. Even Chu Ping herself didn't know that he was actually a eunuch. Later, Chu Pinger's master, Li Rulan, made a big or small mistake. In fact, who could not make a little mistake? However, offending the head was offending the head. Lu Changqing used this as a pretext to make a fuss. He was determined to kill Li Rulan. In order to save her master, Chu Ping had no choice but to beg Lu Jingguang. The latter gladly agreed, but only on one condition, which was that Chu Ping had to become his cultivation partner. On one hand, there was the promise of her sweetheart, and on the other hand, there was the kindness of her master, who was like a mother to her. Chu Ping was in a dilemma. In the end, she agreed for the sake of her master. In the end, her master was saved, and she became Lu Jingguang's dual cultivation partner. That was how the story went. Yu Qianqiu didn't expect that he was the reason why this matter ended up. However, after thinking about it, he felt relieved. Even if he didn't castrate Lu Jingguang, that bastard would still have a way to deal with Chu Pinger. However, what he couldn't figure out was how a castrated person could have dual cultivation with Chu Pinger. Yu Qianqiu asked with a strange expression, "Lu Jingguang was castrated by me. You took dual cultivation." That Chu Pinger was not a fool. She naturally understood what he meant. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. "I never let him touch my body, so he often hit me. At first I thought, who knew that you..." She paused and gritted her teeth. "You're really a pervert." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he asked, "You're saying that up until now you've never let him touch your body? Then you..." Although he didn't finish his words, Chu Ping already understood what he wanted to say. She shyly nodded, but then her expression darkened again and she said, "But what can I do? Everyone in the cultivation world knows that I'm his dual cultivation partner." Waha! Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his head and laughed wildly. Chapter 174. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased with himself. Not just a little pleased but extremely pleased with himself. Fortunately, he didn't like that bastard Lu Jingguang back then, so he took the initiative to castrate him. Otherwise he would have suffered a huge loss. He really had great foresight. Just think about it, which man would be able to hold himself back from having such a beautiful woman by his side? Only that silly girl, Chu Ping, would be so confident and think that she could protect herself. As a man with bad intentions, and a man who was in an absolutely dominant position, it was a piece of cake for him to lay his hands on any woman he wanted. Yet you refused? You think you're smart? You're running to the heavens. It's only a matter of time before I get you into bed, and there are thousands of ways to deal with you. Putting himself in her shoes, he didn't believe that if you put a good cabbage in a pigsty, there would be a pig that wouldn't go for it. Of course, Yu Qianqiu had already admitted countless times in his previous life and this life that he wasn't a good person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used his own yardstick to measure other people's heart and killed Lu Jingguang so early. But now, he was deeply rejoicing that his actions back then were simply too wise. Chu Pinger looked at him with complicated feelings and tears rolled down her cheeks. Seeing him laughing so crazily, she thought that he was laughing out of extreme anger, laughing at her for not being able to stand her ground. In this era, a woman's reputation in this aspect, whether it was in the secular world or the cultivation world, could not be tarnished. Men could have multiple wives and concubines, but women couldn't. Once they married someone, they would belong to that person for the rest of their lives. In fact, ever since Chu Ping'er agreed to be Lu Jingguang's Dao companion, she no longer had any expectations for the future. She guarded her body with all her might, and silently stood by Yu Qianqiu in her heart. All of this was just a dream of a woman who had fallen in love with someone. Although she knew that her dream would never come true, this dream was really beautiful. It was the motivation for her to live on. The more Chu Ping'er thought about it, the sadder she became. She cried out loud. Today her dream was finally shattered by Yu Qianqiu's laughter. She didn't expect that her dream would be so fragile in front of Yu Qianqiu. Her heart, which had long been broken into pieces, was once again shattered. Where should he go from now on? Seeing her cry so sadly, Yu Qianqiu was stunned and reached out to pull her. Chu Ping'er quickly stepped back, shook her head and cried, "Don't touch me. You know everything now. Are you satisfied now? Can you let me go now?" "Oh, let you go? If you don't go with me, where do you want to go?" Yu Qianqiu said in surprise. At first he was worried that Chu Ping'er had been violated by Lu Jingguang. After all, eunuchs were physically immature. Their personalities were more distorted. To put it bluntly, they were perverts. If that was the case, even if he accepted Chu Ping'er, he was afraid that his heart would be as uncomfortable as swallowing a few flies. Now the grudge in his heart was gone. What he cared about was that Chu Ping'er's body was still pure. What he cared about was that no other man had touched Chu Ping'er's body before him. What he cared about was that Chu Ping'er's virginity still belonged to him. As for what would happen in the future if Chu Ping'er was cursed, saying that she was a whore or a slut, "Sorry, if you have the ability, come at me. I will kill you. In order to protect the woman I love, I will do anything. Go with you." Chu Ping'er thought that she had heard it wrong. For a moment she forgot to cry. She didn't believe that Yu Qianqiu would bear the curse of seducing other people's wife for her. But he also didn't know what Yu Qianqiu cared about. Of course, the premise of all this was naturally that Yu Qianqiu had feelings for this woman. As long as a man wasn't sick, he would do it. Yu Qianqiu strode over and hugged Chu Ping'er tightly in his arms, unwilling to let go. He whispered in her ear, "It's all my fault. I should have made up my mind to take you away from the beginning. All the hardships you've suffered were all caused by me. I really regret it. Don't cry anymore. If you cry again, I'll feel even worse than you. Come with me. I won't let you suffer even the slightest bit. Trust me." Chu Ping'er buried her head in his arms and cried even harder. The muffled sound made people feel as if their hearts were being torn apart. After crying for a while, Chu Ping'er suddenly pushed him away. She shook her head and said, "No, I can't go with you. This will ruin your reputation. It's unfair to you. I can't abandon my master." Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. Master, it's master again. If I don't kill you, don't you know how to turn back? Damn it. Which be TC did this to my woman? I will kill you sooner or later." After slightly suppressing the anger in his heart, Yu Qianqiu walked closer and said softly, "Reputation is really worthless to me. Ping'er, go with me. Don't worry, I will definitely go to Ongquangsung and find your master to accompany you. Don't lie to me. You have killed so many disciples of Ongquangsung. How can you go back to Ongquangsung? Even if you go back, the people of Ongquangsung will definitely not let you go." Chu Ping'er cried as she retreated. "I lied to you?" Yu Qianqiu was angered by her. He shouted sternly, "What kind of bullsh*t is Ongquangsung? I swear to the heavens that if I don't flatten Ongquangsung, I am not a human. Let's see how you can go back in the future." Chu Ping'er was stunned by his words. She forgot to cry. Can a cultivator's oath be casually made? What are you looking at? Other than coming with me today, you can't go anywhere else. Yu Qianqiu's face was filled with anger. He walked over and hugged her. The two of them immediately disappeared without a trace. When they reached Utopia, Chu Ping'er was still in a blind impulse. She did not notice that the scene around her had changed. She struggled desperately in Yu Qianqiu's arms. In a fit of anger, the latter carried her and teleported to a lake. He threw Chu Ping'er into the lake and shouted, "I will wake you up." Chu Ping'er immediately flopped around in the water. Although she was not in a deep position, she was still drowned by the sudden fall. When she regained her footing, she quickly walked towards the shore. Yu Qianqiu stood on a large stone platform by the shore with a gloomy expression. He was indeed angered by her. Suddenly his expression froze. After Chu Ping'er's white dress was wet, the moment she walked out of the water, it immediately wrapped around her beautiful figure. Yu Qianqiu only felt a surge of heat rising from his abdomen. An irrepressible urge appeared in his mind. He felt that there was an evil fire that needed to be vented. He immediately leaped over, opened his arms and hugged Chu Ping'er in his embrace. Chapter 175. The water grass by the lake was plump, but there was a disharmonious scene. The woman was pressed on the grass. Her soaked clothes were torn to shreds. There were only a few pieces of cloth hanging on her body, revealing her white and tender skin. Her plump body was exposed to the air. She was being crazily assaulted by a pair of big hands. She struggled, but she was powerless to resist. The man was dizzy with desire, and he forced himself in regardless of anything. Powerless crying, painful moaning, and heavy breathing gradually mixed together, destroying the tranquility of the lake. In the grass not far away, a few colorful pheasants poked their heads out and looked around. Everything was over. The two naked bodies hugged each other and stopped moving. The lake returned to its tranquility. Chu Ping'er obediently curled up in the arms of Yu Qianqiu. The latter glanced at the former and finally let out a comfortable breath after venting the evil fire. He pulled out a grass and put it in his mouth. Looking at the blue sky, there was a trace of a proud smile on his face. Women were often like this. If a man did not make the deepest breakthrough in her body, she would always leave some leeway and would never really treat you as her man. The so-called platonic love in his previous life was pure F***king nonsense. Some self-righteous guys took the feeling as love and described it to be very beautiful. In the end, some people were fooled into expecting and longing for this kind of love. In the end, they still couldn't resist the temptation of the body, and something that shouldn't have happened. Their bellies were still big. Only talking about love but not doing it? What a pervert. Was that still called love? In the words of Yu Qianqiu, this kind of adulterous couple should be dug, separated, and buried alive so that they could be platonic forever. Qianqiu. Yes. Chu Ping'er moved her body and slightly raised her head. She looked at him with eyes that were still full of lust and said, "You said you would bring my master. Don't worry. I will definitely bring your master." Although this was what Yu Qianqiu said, his eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. It could be said that he hated hearing her mention her master the most. He thought to himself, whether your master is dead or alive, I will bring him to you." After saying that, Yu Qianqiu pushed her away, picked up his clothes and put them on. When he turned around, he found Chu Ping'er curled up her limbs. She could no longer find any clothes to cover her body. Her plump and fair body was exposed to the air, and it was indeed very attractive. Yu Qianqiu picked up the two storage bags not far away. One was the one he gave her, and the other was also hers. He believed that the clothes she wanted to change into should be inside. After giving it to her, Chu Ping'er quickly took out a set of clothes and put them on. Then she gently leaned on Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu did not stay in Utopia for too long. He returned to his room in the Cultivation Alliance. As soon as he left the room, he met his senior brother from Supporting Immortal Island, who told him that Elder Quan was looking for him. After meeting Elder Quan, Quan Deming asked about what had happened between him and the people from the demonic Dao in Hundred Flowers house. Yu Qianqiu told him about what had happened in the demon region. Quan Deming naturally understood and did not ask much. Then he met Qing Gingqing, who had come to look for him. The two of them had done many transactions in private and were old friends. Qing Gingqing acted as the host and found a tavern. The two of them did not talk about anything serious before leaving. The shopkeeper recognized him at a glance. Last time, when Yu Qianqiu came, he saw that he was very familiar with Bai Zitsong and the others. He knew that he was Bai Zitsong's friend, and so he led him to the courtyard behind the shop. Yu Qianqiu saw that he was very familiar with Bai Zitsong and the others. In the end, the four of them were gathered there waiting for him. The four of them were shocked by the strength that Yu Qianqiu had casually displayed. They thought that it was a secret force from Supporting Immortal Island. In the end, the guy on the horse said, "What is Supporting Immortal Island?" and changed their minds. There was actually a force that did not take Supporting Immortal Island seriously? In that case, the force that was displayed this time was definitely not all. The four of them were even more shocked. To put it bluntly, the existence of such a powerful force with unknown background could completely threaten the safety of the four families. As the successors of the four families, it was impossible for the four of them not to be concerned about this. They all wanted to understand a thing or two from Yu Qianqiu. To Yu Qianqiu, it was naturally intentional to reveal a bit of his strength in front of the four of them. The five of them sat around a table and were served fragrant tea. Bai Zitsong smiled and asked, "Is everything settled?" "Damn it. Fortunately, I castrated that bastard in advance. Otherwise, I would have suffered a great loss. Yu Qianqiu snorted. The few of them understood what he meant. He was telling them that Chu Ping'er was still pure. Bai Zitsong frowned and said, Brother Yu, have you considered the consequences of this? If others knew about this, I'm afraid that Brother Yu would be condemned by everyone and supporting Immortal Island's reputation would be tarnished. Anong Kwangtsung would definitely not let you off. To them, no matter what happened in the past, stealing someone else's wife was still a little hard to accept. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, I'll chop off whoever dares to point at me. No matter how important supporting Immortal Island's reputation is, it can't stop me from finding a woman. As for Ong Kwangtsung, it's already good enough that I didn't look for him. If they dare to look for trouble with me, then they must be tired of living. Moreover, if the four of you don't say anything about this, who else would know? The four of them were stunned. Yu Qianqiu pointed at them and it felt like he was warning them not to speak about what happened today. Otherwise, if the few of them knew about it, how could they talk about it? Brother Yu, who are those men in black? Why didn't we four families know that there's such a force in the cultivation world? Bai Zitsong asked casually. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Do you mean the entire cultivation world or the cultivation world of the Wuxia Empire? If it's the entire cultivation world, I believe there are many things that you four families don't know about. For example, how much do you know about the Phantom region? Tan Fei was stunned and said, The cultivation world that we're talking about is naturally the cultivation world of the Wuxia Empire. Could it be? Brother Yu, are you saying that those men in black don't belong to the cultivation world of the Wuxia Empire? I didn't say that. You said it yourself. Yu Qianqiu joked and took a sip of the fragrant tea in his hand. He shook his head and said, Forget it. You don't have to ask about this. There won't be any harm to your families. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but it's for your own good. Knowing too much about some things isn't good for the four families. Seeing that he was being so mysterious, the four of them didn't ask any more and changed the topic. Bai Zitsong smiled and said, The four of us have been out for a while. We're going back today. I wonder if Brother Yu is interested in visiting the four families? Yu Qianqiu put down the teacup in his hand and scratched his head and said, I want to go, but I don't know if I can leave. I have to ask for permission. Alright, what do the four families do for fun? Fun. Bai Zitsong pouted at Wu Liqing and said, The Wu clan's auction business is famous in the entire cultivation world. Recently, the Wu clan will be holding their biggest auction in 5 years. At that time, there will definitely be a lot of rare items appearing. I wonder if Brother Yu is interested in taking a look? Cultivation World's auction? I haven't seen that before. I really want to go. Yu Qianqiu was excited. He then shook his head and said, Sigh. I don't know if our elder Guan will let me go. If that's the case, why don't the four of us accompany you to the Cultivation Alliance to ask for permission? I believe your Fuxian Island will give us some face. What do you think, Brother Yu? Bai Zitsong smiled. That's great. Let's go now. Yu Qianqiu stood up and said happily. The four of them laughed and stood up. For the four of them, for the sake of their clans, rather than worrying about the black-robed man's threat, it was better to be friends with him. Yu Qianqiu was a very good link, and this was also the reason why Bai Zitsong had warmly invited them. Chapter 176. As the five of them walked through the market talking and laughing, someone suddenly shouted, Mr. Yu. They stopped. Yu Qianqiu looked back and saw Donghua Su, who had sold him the white talisman, running over happily. He couldn't help but wonder, didn't you say it would take at least 2 to 3 days? What? It's only been a day and you're back? Old man Donghua sized up the other 4 cultivators and discovered that none of them were cultivators that he could see through. He then cupped his fists toward Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, Mr. Yu, it's like this. I've prepared some food and wine at home, so I'd like to trouble you and your companions to come to my place for a while. Yu Qianqiu felt more and more strange. He said, Donghua Su, this is only the 2nd time we've met. Why are you inviting us to eat and drink? Donghua Su looked around and seemed to be a little worried. He just nodded and bowed and said, Please do me the honor. It won't take much time. They looked at each other and finally nodded slightly. They all wanted to see what this old man was up to. Yu Qianqiu looked at him for a while, pinched his chin and said slowly, Old man Donghua, don't play tricks on us. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences. Lead the way. Donghua Su said eagerly, I don't dare, I don't dare. Just like that, the 5 of them were easily lured away. It was mainly due to their curiosity. After leaving the market to the south, there were many houses not far down the slope. They were all built by people who had been making a living here for a long time. Over time, it became a residential area. The 100 Flowers Valley was doing business with people all over the world. Naturally, it needed some people. As long as there was no problem with their origin, they were allowed to develop. Of course, the rules of the 100 Flowers Valley were still obeyed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stay here for long. Dongwasu led them to a secluded courtyard and said with an apologetic smile, "This is this old man's residence. It's a little shabby, please excuse me." The few of them looked around. Although the courtyard was small, it exuded elegance and was not as shabby as he said. It was a good place to live. However, there was something strange about this matter. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Old man Dongwa, don't keep me in suspense. Just say what you want." "Yes, yes." Dongwasu shouted into the house. "Old woman, is everything ready?" "Done." A middle-aged woman dressed in a secular household's attire walked out and bowed to the crowd. She looked much younger than old man Dongwa, but it was unexpected that she was the old woman he had mentioned. The few of them checked again. Her cultivation level was at the final stage of the foundation establishment realm, which was slightly higher than Dongwasu's. This was not hard to explain. Usually, those who had better talent and improved their cultivation level in a timely manner would naturally be better at delaying aging. The few of them scratched their heads and were invited into the main hall by the couple. A table full of fragrant aroma wafted through the air. A sumptuous feast of wine and dishes were already waiting for them. Dongwasu filled their cups and invited them to eat. His wife, on the other hand, stood at the side with a faint smile on her face. Her cultivation level was clearly much higher than her husband's, but she was willing to serve as a foil. She was a good wife who lived at home. The moment Yu Qianqiu smelled the wine, he knew that it was the 100 Flowers Valley's good wine, the 100 Flowers Brew. He glanced at the woman standing at the side and said with some mercy, "Mr. Dongwa, this pot of 100 Flowers Brew costs a lot. It'll probably be difficult to buy a pot even if you sell talismans for half a year. How can we drink this wine in peace? If you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush, I'm confused." A trace of embarrassment appeared on Dongwasu's old face, and he nodded to his wife. The middle-aged woman smiled apologetically at everyone and quickly brought a child about 7 or 8 years old from the side room. The child's big black eyes curiously looked at the few people in front of him. The woman next to him gently patted his back, and he immediately bowed to the few of them. The few of them were even more confused. They looked at each other, but even with their intelligence, none of them could figure out what was going on. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, "I say, Mr. Dongwa, what do you mean by this? You treat us to wine and let us watch this child. Could it be that this child has some background?" Dongwasu smiled apologetically and said, "To tell you the truth, this child has no background. He is my grandson. When we were young, we had wandered in the cultivation world and knew that it was full of dangers. We had long been tired of this kind of life and just wanted to live a peaceful life. Later, after we had a daughter, we were even more unwilling to take the risk, so we settled down in this 100 Flowers Valley. With this feeling, we naturally didn't want our daughter to walk on the path of us again. 10 years ago, she found an ordinary man in the secular world and married him. Who knew that when I went to visit her last year, she and her husband died in a war? The grandson they left behind also wandered outside and begged for half a year. After I found him, I brought him back." "Wait." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Mr. Dongwa, what do you mean by telling me this? You said it very clearly, but the more I listened, the more confused I became. What do you mean?" Dongwasu looked at his wife and said to Yu Qianqiu, "Our daughter's death was a big blow to us. We have learned from this painful experience and can't let our grandson walk on the same path as our daughter. We can't bear the pain of seeing our son die before us. My grandson has some spiritual roots, so I sincerely hope that Mr. Yu can recommend my grandson to supporting Immortal Island for cultivation." So that was the case. Bai Zitsong and the rest smiled, but Yu Qianqiu's face twitched a little. "Why are you looking for me if you want to send your grandson to supporting Immortal Island for cultivation? Isn't there a shop of supporting Immortal Island in this 100 Flowers Valley? Why don't you just send your grandson there? Mr. Yu, don't you know that supporting Immortal Island always finds its own disciples and never accepts disciples who send themselves to the door?" Dongwasu was surprised. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Supporting Immortal Island seemed to have such a nonsensical sect rule. Oftentimes, some disciples who were expelled from the sect couldn't even find their original home. However, it seemed like he had indeed gone to look for them. However, that was because he had the immortal supporting token. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, "There are many cultivation sects in the world. Why do you insist on sending your grandson to supporting Immortal Island? For example, my 4 friends are from the 4 major clans in the cultivation world. It's not a bad idea to send your grandson to the 4 major clans to cultivate." The 4 of them rolled their eyes. They had never seen such a person. "Don't push it to us even if you don't want to." They were all young people. Who would be willing to accept a disciple for a sect? It was a strenuous and unrewarding task. Bai Zitsong smiled and said, "Brother Yu, don't you understand Mr. Donghua's meaning? Mr. Donghua wants his grandson to have a higher starting point. Besides the world's #1 sect supporting Immortal Island, who else can have such a starting point but me? Mr. Donghua, is this what you mean?" Donghua Su nodded and said, "This Mr. is right. This old man has the same intention. Please help me, Mr. Yu." Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said with a smile, "Mr. Donghua, you are really calculative. I don't think I told you my surname is Yu, right? Mr. Yu's name has been spreading in the 100 Flowers Valley for the past few days. There's no need for you to tell me personally." Donghua Su smiled embarrassedly. In fact, he had only heard about Yu Qianqiu's deeds yesterday. He really didn't know him, including when he was selling the white talismans. Later on, not long after Yu Qianqiu left the stall, there was a show with the demonic cultivators. The old man happened to close the stall and went to watch the show. The result made his heart palpitate. So this kid is Yu Qianqiu. He eats both the righteous and the demonic cultivators. He's amazing. Therefore he set his sights on him. Early in the morning he was waiting at the market. Seeing that he was invited by the shopkeeper of the Bai clan's shop, he clicked his tongue again. He knew that he would have to come out again. Therefore he spent a lot of money to buy a bunch of things for his wife to prepare, and he went back to wait. Hard work pays off. Yu Qianqiu was finally tricked by him. Tan Fei chuckled and said, "Brother Yu doesn't need to say his name in the 100 Flowers Valley." The other 3 couldn't help but chuckle. Yu Qianqiu smiled helplessly. He didn't know whether he should help or not. He waved at the kid and said, "Come here. What's your name?" The kid looked up at his grandmother. Seeing her nod, he walked over and said shyly, "My name is Hong Qi." "Hong Qi, why do you have such a strange name?" "What did you say? You're Hong Qi?" Yu Qianqiu suddenly thought of a famous person, the beggar sect's leader, Hong Qi. But this little guy still wanted to eat. Damn. He'll definitely be an amazing person when he grows up. Chapter 177. Donghua Su smiled. His father's surname is Hong. He was born on the 7th day of the 7th month, so he is named Hong Qi. I hope he will be easy to take care of. Yu Qianqiu nodded and touched Hong Qi's bones. As expected, he had spiritual roots for cultivation. He muttered in his heart, "Damn it. Guan Yu is already following me, so why should I give Hong Qi to supporting Celestial Island? They should all follow me. When I gather East Heretic, West Poison, South Emperor and North Beggar, let's see who is stronger than me." With this thought, Yu Qianqiu touched his nose and smiled at Donghua Su. "How about this? Your grandson should be my disciple since I haven't tasted being a master yet." Ah. Donghua Su and his wife looked at each other. "You are so young?" The 2 of them hesitated. The 4 of them felt weird too, as they didn't see anything special about this kid. Why did this guy want to take a disciple? Did he have nothing better to do? Bai Zitsong snorted at the couple. "Brother Yu is willing to take your grandson as his disciple. That is his fortune." The couple regretted it as they felt like they had invited a wolf into their house. However, they couldn't afford to offend any one of them. Donghua Su smiled. Since he is Mr. Yu's disciple, he is naturally a disciple of supporting Celestial Island. It's the same. Who said that? My disciple is my disciple, and supporting Celestial Island's disciple is supporting Celestial Island's disciple. Don't mix it up, Yu Qianqiu said in disdain. The couple exclaimed at the same time as they couldn't understand the difference. Donghua Su had a weird expression. Is Mr. Yu not a disciple of supporting Celestial Island? I am a disciple of supporting Celestial Island. What does that have to do with my disciple? Yu Qianqiu said, and then casually said, "What is supporting Celestial Island?" No one was deaf. Although his voice was soft, they all heard it. The couple was a little confused. Bai Zitsong and the other 3 exchanged glances. Could it be that this kid would join the mysterious force behind Yu Qianqiu that didn't even put Fushin Island in his eyes? The 4 of them immediately looked at Hong Qi in a new light. Hongqi, from today onwards I'm your master. Kowtow and acknowledge me as your master. Yu Qianqiu sat up straight. It was his first time accepting a disciple, so he was very formal. Hongqi looked at his grandfather and grandmother, who were in a daze. Seeing that they didn't object, he obediently knelt down and kowtowed 3 times, calling him master. By the time the couple realized what was going on, it was already too late. Their grandson had already gone through the ceremony. Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and looked at Hongqi from left to right. He felt that everything about him was good. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Suddenly he said, "Oh, right. I forgot to give you a greeting gift." He took out a storage bag and put it on the table. "There are 1,000 high-grade spirit stones in here. It should be enough for you to cultivate to Qi training level 10. Then he took out 2 things and put them on the table. "These are 10 foundation establishment pills. When you reach Qi training level 10, you can use them to build your foundation. If it's not enough, I'll give you more." The group of people was dumbfounded. 1,000 high-grade spirit stones and 10 foundation establishment pills. Could this guy be the god of fortune? Bai Zitsong, who was sitting next to him, picked up a foundation establishment pill with a purple aura. His face kept twitching. "Is this the legendary Dan Halo? What does a kid's food have to do with you?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. He snatched the foundation establishment pill from his hand and put it back on the table. Dongwu Su let out a breath of cold air. He said to Hongqi, "Hurry up and thank your master." The couple spent a lot of effort to get a foundation establishment pill back then. They knew very well how important it was to cultivators. The reason why he allowed his grandson to join supporting Immortal Island was because the #1 sect in the world would give him 3 chances to reach the foundation establishment realm. Once he succeeded in his cultivation, he would not be easily bullied. However, Yu Qianqiu gave him 10 chances at once. Basically, it would not be a problem for him to cross the foundation establishment realm. What else could he say? Lil Hongqi knelt down and kowtowed 3 times. He said in a childish voice, "Thank you, master." Yu Qianqiu was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He pulled Yang Kai over and patted Yang Kai's head. Glancing at the storage bag on the table, he said, "I gave you spirit stones for cultivation, but I forgot to give you some pocket money." Saying this, he threw out another storage bag and said, "Here are 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for pocket money." The group of people was completely speechless. This little guy calling him master was too expensive. 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for a master. Wasn't he just trying to scare people? That was incredible. This little guy really had a rich master. After his excitement subsided, Yu Qianqiu remembered that they still had some matters to attend to, so he stood up and said, "Mr. Dongwu, your grandson will remain here for the time being. You'll be guiding him in his cultivation, and when he reaches the foundation establishment stage, I'll naturally personally guide him. As for the matter of him becoming my disciple, keep it a secret for now. I don't want anyone else to know. I hope you remember that." "Understood." The husband and wife bowed. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He patted Lil Hongqi's head and said solemnly, "Work hard on your cultivation. Build your foundation as soon as possible. When that time comes, you'll be free to explore the cultivation world." Lil Hongqi seemed to understand. "Let's go," Yu Qianqiu said to the 4 of them. "Wait." Bai Zitsong smiled. "Since Brother Yu is taking in a disciple, how can we not give him a gift? I'll represent the 4 of us to express our gratitude." He took out a token and turned to Lil Hongqi. "I'm not as rich as your master. This token is for you. If you have any trouble in the future, you can take this token to the Bai family shop in the 100 Flowers Valley. It should be of some help." Hongqi took the token. He didn't know the meaning behind it. However, his grandparents naturally knew. Of course, the things given by Yu Qianqiu and Bai Zitsong would also be kept by his grandparents. In the end, the 5 of them left without eating anything. They even lost a bunch of valuable items. However, they also gained a disciple. The 4 of them congratulated him along the way. Yu Qianqiu accepted it gladly. He was really happy. When they arrived at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance, although the 2 disciples guarding the entrance knew Yu Qianqiu, they still stopped Bai Zitsong and the other 3 due to the rules. Yu Qianqiu couldn't do anything about it. He could only accompany the 4 of them and follow the rules. The 4 of them were here to make Yu Qianqiu proud. There was nothing to hide. They directly reported their identities to the disciples guarding the entrance. A disciple immediately asked everyone to wait. He turned around and went to report. After a while he got permission to let them in. The four of them looked around and didn't find anything strange. When they arrived at the main hall of Fuxian Island, Yu Qianqiu shouted at the door, "Disciple Yu Qianqiu is here to see Elder Quan." "Come in." Quan Deming shouted from inside. After the five of them entered, Yu Qianqiu immediately told him who they were. The four of them greeted him one after another. Quan Deming was very polite to the heirs of the four great clans in the cultivation world. Although they were not as strong as the supporting Immortal Island, when they joined forces, they were not something ordinary sects could compare to. After knowing that the four of them were here to invite Yu Qianqiu to the four major families as a guest, Quan Deming considered for a moment and agreed. If it was Yu Qianqiu who wanted to go, he wouldn't agree. So many people from Fuxian Island had informed him. If something happened to Yu Qianqiu, how was he going to explain to those people? The invitation from the four major families was different. Firstly, it wasn't good to humiliate them. Secondly, with them around, Yu Qianqiu shouldn't have any mishaps. After coming out, the five of them agreed to set off early the next morning. They were going to the place that Yu Qianqiu was interested in, the Wu clan's auction. Chapter 178. It took less than half a day to travel from the Hundred Flowers Valley to Angquangtsung on a flying Dharma artifact. Logically speaking, Wu Baoru and the rest should have returned yesterday. However, there was still no news of them. Lu Chongqing sat cross-legged on the cattail hassock in the middle of the green light hall and felt that something was wrong. Could it be as he had guessed? Would supporting Xian Island make a move on Lu Jingguang and the rest? Originally, he was worried that his guesses were unnecessary. The dignified supporting Xian Island would disdain to do such a thing. However, for the safety of his grandson, he still took precautions. Now, he recalled the news from the Hundred Flowers Valley. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu, whom everyone thought was dead, was still alive and had actually joined supporting Xian Island. Moreover, from the analysis of the few news that came, this kid seemed to be doing very well. He had a lot of faith in both the orthodox and demonic sections. Although he had beaten up Lu Jingguang, Lu Zhangqing thought about it again and decided to temporarily swallow his anger. Back then, he had almost forced Lu Jingguang to his death, so it was reasonable for Lu Jingguang to have this grievance. The situation was stronger than the person. It was not the time to get back the face that he had lost. "Junior brother, have the people we sent returned?" Lu Chongqing asked an elder sitting below. Seeing that his grandson had not returned, he sent two elders to check what was going on. He could only hope that what he was worried about would not happen. The elder pondered and said, "The two junior brothers went in the direction of the Hundred Flowers Valley. They should be back soon." As soon as he finished speaking, a ninth-generation disciple ran in a panic. After bowing, he looked embarrassed and couldn't say a word. Lu Chongqing frowned and reprimanded, "Why are you so flustered? If you have something to say, just say it. Is there news from the two elders?" The ninth-generation disciple said embarrassedly, "The two elders are back. They respectfully invite the sect leader to go to the mountain gate." Lu Chongqing couldn't be bothered to argue with this disciple. Right now he was most concerned about his grandson. He got up and walked out of the hall. The elders on both sides also got up and followed. A group of people quickly passed through the square and arrived outside the mountain gate of Angquangtsung. At this time there were already many people gathered here, but their expressions were not very good. Seeing the sect leader and the elders come, they all gave way to them and bowed. Lu Chongqing anxiously said, "Is there any news from the two brothers?" "Junior brother," the elder said anxiously. "Elder," Lu Chongqing said. What appeared in front of Lu Zhangqing and the others was a large pile of bloody severed limbs on the ground. Not a single complete corpse could be found. There were also two storage bags thrown to the side, which were obviously the things that had been brought back from the dismembered corpses. On a stone platform a little further away from these things, there was a single head. One could vaguely make out Lu Jingguang's face. The bloody scene in front of them couldn't cover up the beautiful scenery around Qingguang Mountain. But at this time, who could appreciate it? No one dared to make a sound. Lu Chongqing's breathing was getting heavier. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Lu Jingguang's head. His whole body was trembling fiercely. After a long time, he closed his eyes and exhaled. Controlling his emotions, he asked in a hoarse voice, "Where did the two junior brothers find them?" Reporting to the sect leader. One of the elders cupped his hands and said, "The place where they were found was less than an hour away from the Hundred Flowers Valley. Judging from the solidified blood, I'm afraid that not long after they left the Hundred Flowers Valley, they were attacked. There were traces of fighting there." That is to say, the person who killed them also came from the Hundred Flowers Valley? Lu Changqing asked with an ashen face. The elder nodded and said, from the surrounding traces, it is quite possible that Elder Wu and the others were pursued from the direction of the Hundred Flowers Valley. There is another matter that is rather strange. Xingguang. He paused, pointed at Lu Xingguang's head and said, Xingguang's head was scattered several tens of meters away. It seems that it was kicked out by someone. What? Lu Changqing's figure swayed. Who had such a big grudge against my grandson? Who killed him and then kicked his head again? After stabilizing himself, the bones in his whole body cracked. He gnashed his teeth and squeezed out a few words. It's Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu probably wouldn't even dream that when he saw Lu Xingguang's head at the scene of the murder, he was very displeased and immediately kicked it far away. Who knew that just based on this point, Lu Changqing intuitively judged that it was Yu Qianqiu who did it? Who knew how he judged it? The others also had doubts about the sect leader's judgment, but they couldn't say anything. An elder beside Lu Changqing consoled, Sect leader, please restrain your grief. There will definitely be a day when the truth will come to light. The ashen-faced Lu Changqing slowly closed his eyes and said in a deep voice, bury them together in the back mountain. After saying that, he resolutely turned around and left. He really wanted to find his grandson's body, but it was already like this. Was it still necessary? The most important thing at the moment was revenge. It was night, the sky was filled with bright stars. There were countless stars on Qingguang Mountain. A figure streaked into the night sky. In the back garden of the Yu Mansion in Swallow Zicheng, Shui Ernyang was preparing to go to the wing room to rest. Two servant girls carried lanterns and led the way. Suddenly, someone said, Shui Daniu's descendant, come here. Shui Ernyang and the two servant girls were startled. There was a lantern hanging in the pavilion of the back garden, and below it stood an old man with a horsetail whisk in his hand. He looked like an immortal, but it was a little strange for him to appear here in the middle of the night. The person who came was the sect leader of Ong Kwangtsung, Lu Changqing. Celestial Master. Shui Ernyang recognized him at a glance. She quickly walked over and with a face full of joy she bowed and said, Celestial Master, why did you come here so late at night? Celestial Master, please wait for a moment, I will call my husband and son to greet Celestial Master now. Hearing that it was Celestial Master, the two servant girls stood at the side, trembling with fear. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Wait. Lu Changqing said in a deep voice, you mean your son is also here? Shui Ernyang was stunned. What? Celestial Master doesn't know? Didn't my Qianqiu tell you? Ah, this child is really... There's no need to trouble yourself. Bring me to him now. Lu Changqing waved his hand and interrupted her. Knowing that Yu Qianqiu was here, he didn't want to be long-winded anymore. In order to calm Shui Ernyang down, he actually squeezed out a smile on his face. Yes. Shui Ernyang didn't dare to say anything else and quickly led the way. The study room of the Yu residence was brightly lit. Yu Chang'e was sitting at the study table, looking at his youngest son practicing calligraphy. He frowned when a series of hurried footsteps came from outside. They had been husband and wife for many years. No matter how fast the footsteps were, Yu Chang'e could tell that one of them belonged to his wife. Why was she so impatient in the middle of the night? The half-closed door of the study room was pushed open. Shui Ernyang rushed in and said with a face full of surprise, Chang'e, the Celestial Master from Qianqiu is here. Yu Chang'e was shocked. Which Celestial Master from Qianqiu? Shui Ernyang stomped her foot and said, which Celestial Master did you say? Of course it's the Celestial Master who took Qianqiu away. He's already outside. You two father and son hurry up and greet him. What? Yu Zhanggui's entire body trembled. He immediately took out a small porcelain bottle from his bosom in a flurry and quickly opened the lid. He wasn't like Shui Ernyang who didn't know anything. Before his eldest son left, he talked to him that night and specifically mentioned Lu Changqing. There was a great hatred between the two. The 3 porcelain bottles that his eldest son left behind were probably to guard against this person because only he knew where the Yu residence was. Don't delay anymore. You two father and son hurry up and greet him. Shui Ernyang urged. Yu Wuqiu didn't understand what his parents were talking about. He held a pen in his hand and looked around. Yu Chang'e calmed his mind and changed his smile to his youngest son. Hurry up and follow me to greet the Celestial Master. No need. Lu Changqing barged in by himself. His face was gloomy and his eyes flickered. In the end he didn't see Yu Qianqiu. He couldn't help but shout at Shui Ernyang in a deep voice, Didn't you say that your son is here? Where is your son? Shui Ernyang pulled up his youngest son who was kneeling and said, This is my youngest son Yu Wucho. The son you're talking about is him? Lu Changqing felt like he was fooled. Shui Ernyang was still there and replied heartlessly, Yes. Yu Changare, who was a shrewd businessman, felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He frowned and didn't say anything. In fact, Lu Changqing and Shui Ernyang had a big misunderstanding in the backyard just now. The former thought that the son the latter was talking about was Yu Qianqiu, because he didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had a youngest son. The latter was used to thinking about problems with her brain. Of course, it had something to do with her not knowing about Yu Qianqiu's situation. She mistakenly thought that the former was talking about her youngest son. That was why this scene happened. Yu Qianqiu killed my grandson. Now that I can't find him, I have to bury your family of 3 with my grandson. Lu Changqing's ferocious face was exposed. Yu Changare immediately pulled his wife and son behind him and stood in front of him. He said sternly, Old man, you're the leader of a sect in the cultivation world. If you want to take revenge, just look for my son. Why do you have to involve us ordinary people? The mother and son behind him were a little confused. They didn't know what was going on. Lu Changqing's usual demeanor was gone. He laughed evilly and said, I kill if I want to. Do I need to explain to you? He shook the horsetail whisk in his hand. Chapter 179. Under the night sky, Ethereal Palace stood at the peak of the mountain, echoing the brilliant stars in the sky. It was isolated, quiet, and charming. Yu Qianqiu, who had tasted the sweetness, pestered Chu Ping'er, and the two of them had another round of fun. After that, Yu Qianqiu pulled her up to the roof of Ethereal Palace, and the two of them romantically counted the stars. Wasn't he going to leave tomorrow? Perhaps he might not return for a few days. His new lover was about to be separated for a short period of time, so he couldn't forget to enjoy himself. Chu Ping'er stayed in Utopia for a day and understood that Yu Qianqiu was the owner of this place. In that case, she could barely be considered the female owner here. There was a hint of surprise in her shyness. However, when she saw Bai Sujin, Chu Ping'er couldn't believe that there was such a beautiful woman in the world. Bai Sujin didn't have any decorations on her. She was dressed in simple white clothes, and a silk ribbon was gently tied up her hair. She walked up to Chu Ping'er elegantly and said with a gentle smile, You're Chu Ping'er? We met in Kwangtsung. Bai Sujin's appearance, demeanor, and temperament made Chu Ping'er feel ashamed of her inferiority. For a moment she didn't know how to reply. Recalling the other party's words, she suddenly recalled the white fox she had seen in Kwangtsung back then. It was her. Compared to before, Bai Sujin's face no longer had the hidden bitterness that had always been there all year round. Now there was a faint, calm and satisfied smile on her face. Compared to before, her elegance was even more exuberant and dazzling. At first glance, it was almost impossible to recognize her. But why was she here? Subconsciously, Chu Ping'er had already regarded herself as the mistress of this place. After a day she understood one thing. Who was the real mistress of this place? Bai Sujin. Even the male owner of this place was obedient when he saw her, bowing and calling her sister. Everyone in Utopia seemed to only recognize her as their mistress. If she said one thing, no one would dare to say another. Although this woman was very good to him, he couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Qianqiu, when will you bring my master here? Are you sure about this trip? On the roof of the Ethereal Palace, Chu Ping'er was nestled in Yu Qianqiu's embrace on a large deck chair. Chu Ping'er frowned and said, Ping'er, you have to trust me. You have to give me time. You have to know that this isn't something that can be done just because you say so. He had already forgotten how many times Chu Ping'er had asked him this question. Sensing the slight displeasure in his tone, Chu Ping'er climbed onto his chest, looked at him and asked, Did I make you unhappy? Don't let your imagination run wild. There's nothing like that. I'm just thinking about how to save your master. Yu Qianqiu hugged the voluptuous and bouncy body that had climbed onto him, caressing it all over as his gaze lingered on the boundless starry sky. Not good. Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry. He pushed away Chu Ping'er and stood up. His divine sense fluctuated, and after a brief check, he discovered that the porcelain bottle he had left for his family had been opened. How could he not be shocked? He had instructed his father to only open it if he encountered any trouble that he couldn't resolve. Using the remaining drop of blood in the porcelain bottle, he spread out his divine sense to check. Other than his parents and younger brother, there was another person in the Yu residence's study. It was Ang Kwangsung sect master Lu Changqing. Yu Qianqiu roared, "Lu Changqing, are you courting death?" Then, he circulated his true essence and shouted to the foot of the mountain, "Yuncheng, gather all the troops for me." His voice spread out, breaking the silence of the night. He seemed unusually agitated and restless. Lu Changqing, who was in the Yu residence's study, had no idea that he had already crossed Yu Qianqiu's bottom line. "Qianqiu, what's wrong?" Chu Ping-er climbed up, pulled him and asked. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and shouted, "Scram!" Chu Ping-er fell back onto the deck chair, and he had already disappeared from the roof, directly appearing in Bai Suzhen's room. Bai Suzhen was looking out the window in shock. She had also heard Yu Qianqiu's agitated and restless voice. She didn't know what had happened, but before she could react, Yu Qianqiu had already grabbed her lily-white hand and said anxiously, "Sister, my family is in danger." Without saying anything else, he had already disappeared from the room with her. Although Guan Yu's troops were already gathering urgently, he was still afraid that they wouldn't make it in time. If he went alone, he definitely wouldn't be able to defeat Lu Changqing with his current cultivation. Thus, he could only drag Bai Suzhen, who was in the final stages of tribulation, along with him. Inside the Yu residence's study, Lu Changqing had just finished speaking, and a cold voice appeared out of nowhere saying, "How arrogant! What right do you have to kill as you please? You'll have to get through me first." Yu Qianqiu and Bai Suzhen suddenly appeared in the study. Yu Qianqiu stared at Lu Changqing and sneered. Today he wouldn't let him go even if he died. Who told him to touch something that he shouldn't have touched? Lu Changqing was stunned on the spot. Where did they come from? When little Yu Wuqiu saw his big brother, his face was full of surprise, and the fear just now was gone. He immediately ran to Lu Changqing and complained, "Big brother, he said that he wanted to kill his parents and me to be buried with his grandson. He's bullsh****, just ignore him." Yu Qianqiu pushed his brother behind him. He was now also relieved, and he introduced them to Bai Suzhen. "This is my parents and brother." Little Yu Wuqiu poked his head out and stared at Bai Suzhen, nodding and saying, "Sister is so beautiful." Bai Suzhen smiled at him and then bowed to Yu Changre and Shui Ernyang. When the couple saw that their son had come, they were already relieved. At this time they saw such a beautiful girl and it was brought by their son. They immediately looked at each other and immediately forgot the worries they had just now. Their eyes swept back and forth between their son and the beautiful girl, and there was a meaningful look in their eyes. Lu Changqing was very excited by the happy family in front of him. He pointed his finger and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, it was you who killed Jingguang." Yu Qianqiu and Bai Suzhen both took a step forward and blocked the three people behind them. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "You dog, I really want to kill that damn eunuch with my own hands, but it's a pity that I can't do that." "What? Do you want revenge?" "To tell you the truth, the person who killed your grandson is outside. I'm afraid that you don't have the ability to take revenge and instead, you will lose your old life." "What? You didn't kill him? Then who else could it be?" Lu Changqing shouted in disbelief. He had completely ignored the devastatingly beautiful woman beside him. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "You will know if you have the ability to go out and have a look." As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of footsteps came from all around, and from time to time, there were cries of alarm from the servants in the mansion. Lu Changqing shook the horsetail whisk in his hand backhandedly, and a white light quietly hit a big hole in the wall behind him. It could be seen that he had an extraordinary degree of control over his cultivation. He rushed out in a flash and looked around, only to see that there were people in black everywhere. On top of the walls and on the roofs, there were countless of them. As soon as he came out, he was immediately surrounded by the people in black. Looking at the cultivation of these people, the lowest was at the core formation stage, and there were even many at the late nascent soul stage. Lu Zhangqing, who had been blinded by hatred, suddenly sobered up. He was greatly shocked. He was only at the late nascent soul stage. How could he be so reckless? As the leader of a sect, he actually came out to seek revenge? It was already impossible to retreat into the house, and the hole in the wall was already guarded by 5 men in black of the late nascent soul stage. In the face of the threat of death, Lu Changqing was scared out of his wits, and suddenly felt that his chances of survival were slim. Chapter 180. Yunchang, since this old man is here, don't let him go back. Yu Qianqiu's voice floated out from the study. Shoo. A whistling sound came from somewhere, and it was Guan Yu's voice. Most of the black-clothed men flew backwards, and the group of people surrounding him became much thinner, but there were still close to 100 of them. It should be known that this time, Yu Qianqiu called out all three companies in a fit of anger. Lu Changqing looked around vigilantly, and saw that most of the people surrounding him were at the late nascent soul stage, and the weaker ones were at the middle nascent soul stage. A fierce expression appeared on his face, and with a flick of his sleeve, a short flying sword flashed with a green light. In the blink of an eye, it expanded into a normal-sized flying sword. The body of the sword was blue, and it flashed a bewitching light in the night as it circled around his body. The horsetail whisk in his other hand was also flung away, and he slowly paced around in a defensive manner. Kill. Guan Yu's voice came again. Nearly 100 cold lights left the hands of the men in black, and they quickly shot towards Lu Changqing. The latter quickly raised the horsetail whisk in his hand, and a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared. The horsetail whisk flashed with a white light, and the whisk instantly grew longer and spread out. Then it spun rapidly like an umbrella, and a series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds rang out. Nearly 100 flying swords were all bounced off by the flexible horsetail whisk. It was hard to believe that under the control of the people the flying swords attacked back and forth a few times, but they couldn't advance at all. Immediately someone exclaimed, "Bai Yi's horsetail whisk, sect leader Ong Kwangsung's top-grade defensive magic treasure. He is Ong Kwangsung's sect leader Lu Changqing." What? Then someone else shouted, "Everyone be careful, that green flying sword is a top-grade offensive magic treasure, Ong Kwangsung's green destiny sword." This group of men in black came from various major sects, and naturally there was no lack of people who knew their stuff. Although they had never seen Lu Changqing before, they immediately recognized him based on these two magic treasures. One must know that the weapons used in the cultivation world are generally divided into three types: magic tools, magic treasures, and spirit treasures. Generally, the flying swords used by cultivators were ordinary artifacts, but there were also some that could be refined into high-grade artifacts with better materials. However, weapons that had reached the magic treasure level were extraordinary. Magic treasures were not something that ordinary people could afford to use. Not only were the materials required to refine them expensive, but there were also too few people who had the ability to refine magic treasures. Occasionally they would need to rely on luck to refine a good one. As for numinous treasures, he had only heard of them but had never seen them. Moreover, this person actually possessed a top-notch high-grade defensive magic treasure and a top-notch high-grade offensive magic treasure at the same time. Judging by the appearance of the magic treasure, who else could this person be other than the sect master of Ong Kwangsung, Lu Changqing? Nearly 100 flying swords attacked again, attacking like a storm, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not break through the seemingly thin whiskers. This horsetail whisker is also a magic treasure? Yu Qianqiu, who was watching the battle from the broken wall of the study, muttered. When Ong Kwangsung framed Wu Baoru wanted to kill him with a flying sword. He had seen Lu Changqing's horsetail whisker easily subdue the flying sword. At that time he had thought that Lu Changqing's cultivation was profound, but he had never expected that this broken horsetail whisker was actually a magic treasure. Although he had stayed in the cultivation world for a long time, he had never paid much attention to magic treasures. The key was that he had never seen them before, so he had no concept of them. The first time he saw one, he was sure that it was the diamond bracelet used by the disciple of the cultivation pavilion during the competition on Fuxian Island. Now he was already wearing it, but he had never used it. The reason why he hadn't used it was because he was afraid that one day, someone would use the same method to kill him. If that happened, he would die in vain. Now that he saw that the horsetail whisker could block the attacks of nearly 100 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, he immediately realized the benefits of a defensive magic treasure. He casually took out the bracelet and put it on his wrist. Then he injected a bit of his true essence into it, and a faint yellow light enveloped him. The more true essence he injected, the darker the color of the light enveloped him. After putting away the diamond bracelet, Yu Qianqiu felt a bit depressed. Could it be that so many late-stage nascent soul cultivators couldn't deal with a late-stage nascent soul cultivator like Lu Changqing? Lu Changqing, who was relying on a magic treasure to defend himself, also came to a realization. That's right. What was he worried about? What was there to be afraid of? What was the point of having so many nascent soul cultivators? With Ong Kwangsung's two magic treasures in hand, what could they do to him? Lu Changqing's old face revealed a trace of an evil smile. He used the horsetail whisker to defend himself while sizing up the attacking black-clothed men. When his gaze fell on the flying sword that was attacking him, his face immediately sank. The The flying swords that came to attack were of various shapes and sizes. Some were from the supporting Immortals Island, the Myriad Devils Temple, the Deluo sect, the Hopeful Moon sect, the Corpse God sect, and their old enemy, the Blood Devils Temple. It was actually people from the top 3 sects of the righteous and demonic sects who had joined forces to attack him. How was this possible? Lu Changqing shouted sternly, "Who are you people?" Based on his understanding of the righteous and demonic sects, it was absolutely impossible for such a thing to happen. Although everyone had been deprived of their original primordial spirits and trapped in utopia all these years, the changes brought about by the military-style spiritual training were difficult to underestimate. To put it simply, they had found spiritual sustenance. It was a spiritual belief that was different from when they only knew how to blindly cultivate in the past. Yu Qianqiu knew this very well. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many extremists in his previous life. The power of spiritual belief was terrifying. This was what Yu Qianqiu had constantly instilled in them. The attacks were getting more and more intense. Who would answer such a question? Otherwise, there would be no need to cover their faces when they came out to meet people. In fact, Lu Changqing was really afraid that they were from the 6 sections. If that was the case, what was the purpose of these 6 sects attacking the Ong Guangzhang sect leader? Just thinking about it made one shudder. Could it be that they wanted to destroy Ong Guangzhang? Seeing that they did not answer, Lu Changqing, who was shrouded in thousands of strands of dust, let out a sigh. The dust fluttered and instantly condensed into nearly 100 strands, spreading out like tentacles. Dozens of attacking flying swords were immediately entangled and taken away by the dust strands. The dozens of people controlling the flying swords were shocked. Once the flying swords were entangled by the dust strands, their connection with their divine senses was immediately severed. They could no longer control their attacks. In just a few moments, some people did not have time to withdraw their flying swords, and dozens of them were taken away by the dust strands. Yu Qianqiu let out a breath of cold air. Damn. This horsetail whisk was too awesome. It was obviously a defensive magic tool, but it actually had a bit of an offensive nature. It had taken away so many flying swords in one go. It was worthy of being the magic tool used by the Ong Guangzhang sect leader. Damn. This was troublesome. They could not kill this old guy. Lu Changqing glanced at the surrounding black-clothed people and let out another sigh. The dust strands shook and flashed with a white light. Suddenly they grew several times longer, dragging dozens of flying swords and spinning at high speed. Someone immediately shouted, "Quickly get out of the way." Yu Qianqiu also realized the danger. While he was dodging, he did not forget to look at his parents. He saw that Bai Suzhen had already scattered a white silk and wrapped the family of 3. She waved her palm and sent the family of 3 flying far away. Crash, crash. A series of miserable cries rang out. Stone fragments and wood flew everywhere. In the blink of an eye, all the buildings within a radius of 10 meters were demolished by Lu Changqing. Some of the servants who were hiding in the rooms did not even have time to escape. They were the ones who screamed. The spinning whisk stopped. At this moment, Lu Changqing looked like he was covered in thorns from afar, making it impossible for anyone to attack him. He looked like he was invincible with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Yu Chang'e and company, who were protected by Bai Suzhen, were all dumbfounded. They had never seen such a situation before. If they continued to fight, the entire Yu residence would probably be demolished. Guan Yu flew out from an alley and landed beside Yu Qianqiu. He asked, "Boss? What do we do now? We can't even get close to this old guy." "Let me do it." Bai Suzhen walked over. "No need for now. Big sister, I will make a move when I need you. I don't believe that so many of us can't deal with him alone." Yu Qianqiu turned around and shouted at the crowd, "I gave you so many talismans. Save them for later. Everyone attack together. As long as you can attack, attack. I don't believe you can't defeat him." That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.